Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, January the 12th. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel.
Good morning. In accordance with Governor Newsom's order of March 17th, 2020, this board meeting will be conducted virtually and remotely. Members of the public wishing to call in and offer public comment may call area code 213-306-3065. Again, that number is 213-306-3065. When prompted, please enter meeting code 146-813-2096. Again, that's meeting code 146-813-2096. Members of the public will be allowed 2 minutes per item for a total of 5 minutes. When calling in, if you are listening to the meeting on Channel 35, please turn down your computer so that we do not get feedback. Madam Secretary, at this point, I turn it over back to you.
Commissioners, please say present for roll call. Commissioner BARAD. Commissioner LEHRER. Please unmute. Commissioner LEHRER.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY.
Present.
Vice President REYES.
Present.
Commissioner BARAD. We're having technical difficulties with Commissioner BARAD. 4 members present and a quorum. We'll get her back on the line. Opening of the board meeting by President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you, Susie. I would like to open the meeting today with a few comments about a personal friend and a friend and champion of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, retired City Council member Tom LaBonge. A city aide, a mayor's deputy, a councilman, and is noted by the Los Angeles Times an eternal groupie for the city that his family called home since 1901. Tom, who served on the city council from 2001 to 2015, died this past Thursday. I can say without fear of contradiction that there has been no greater fan of Los Angeles, its history, its public places, and most of all, its people. He befriended nearly everyone he met, and he was an especially good friend to everyone at LADWP, where he worked for years prior to his service in City Hall. He understood what it takes to make our city run, and that each and every one of us could contribute to its greatness in some way, large or small, each day. In an extraordinary but altogether fitting tribute to this humble, generous, warm, affirming teddy bear of a man. His passing by his hometown paper was linked with the other 2 great Toms of the city of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley and Tommy Lasorda. His greatness is not measured by his achievements, his titles, or any of the things that one would generally think of when writing a tribute. Tom's greatness was reflected by his kindness, by his enthusiasm, and by the way in which he lifted us all whenever we met, wherever we met. It's particularly noteworthy, and for me today, particularly poignant to think about a man who exhibited what it means to be a neighbor, a friend, and a leader in these troubled times. In remembrance of Tom, we will adjourn today's board meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commission in his honor. And before we begin today, I would also like to take a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you all. Susie?
Yes.
Unless there are comments from other board members, I'd like to open public comment.
Commissioner, the length of time for public comment, do we have a time limit?
How many people do we have in queue?
Approximately 25.
I would simply, at this time, I'd like to limit public comment to 1 minute, 30 seconds for each speaker, if that's possible. I know that we traditionally have a 2-minute limit, but in light of the number of speakers and the length of our agenda, I would ask the indulgence of those who have called in for public comment to try to shave 30 seconds off your comments. Susie, with that, you can move to public comment.
Yes. I would like to call Kate from Council Member Mike Bonin's office. Kate, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Kate Painus. I am Los Angeles Councilmember Mike Bonin's legislative deputy. He has asked that I speak on his behalf today by reading the following letter that he sent to you, the DWP commissioners, yesterday.
Thank you, Kate. Oh, I said thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. Great. Los Angeles' stake in the Intermountain Power Project in Utah presents us with a tremendous opportunity to take bold action in our ongoing fight against the climate crisis. I'm writing today to urge to you to commit the Department of Water and Power to completely repowering IPP with renewable energy by 2025 and not anchoring us to a dirty, dangerous, and outdated fossil fuel. Thanks to the focus, attention, and passion of dedicated neighbors from throughout Los Angeles has been on the forefront of showing how a big city can lead the transition away from harmful fossil fuels to sustainable, clean energy. But that energy is jeopardized by the plan to double down on fossil fuels by building a gas-fired power plant to replace the power we previously received from burning coal. When we announced that the coal-fired power plant at IPP would be shut down in favor of cleaner alternatives, it was an important signal that Los Angeles was serious about combating the climate crisis. Now, we are faced with the hard work of following through on not just the specific commitment to move beyond coal at IPP, but also to the spirit of the effort being led by young people who do not want to see their future destroyed by climate change. I understand and appreciate that current plans for IPP to use hydrogen to generate 30% of the power on the first day of operation in 2025. The effort to rely on steadily increasing electrolyzed hydrogen at the plant until it is generating 100% of its power from renewable hydrogen by 2045 has the right goal in mind, but I believe it is not nearly as ambitious as the climate crisis demands. LADWP staff has claimed previously that it may be technically feasible to generate 100% of the power from IPP from renewable hydrogen on day one of the plant's operation, and I strongly encourage your board to commit to this goal. History sometimes presents defining moments, forcing us to show whether we are capable of a great challenge or whether we will shrink from it. We are living our defining moment in the existential battle against climate change. We must rise to it. For the good of future generations, I urge you to commit to a completely clean future at IPP by calling for 100% of the energy generated at the plant to come from renewable resources in 2025. Thank you so much. Thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, callers. As I unmute you, please state your full name and the item you would like to speak on. Please be mindful that you will have a minute and a half for comments. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 598, please begin.
Hello, my name is Dan Kegel. The plan for Intermountain appears to call for the natural gas hydrogen turbine to run at all times because the high voltage transmission line requires 400 megawatts to keep it in operation. However, during sunny days, it would be more efficient to use solar power directly and shut down the turbines. To keep the high voltage DC transmission line stable, an Eland solar-sized battery could be sited at Intermountain. This would reduce carbon emissions significantly during the 10 or 15 years the plant is planned to operate on natural gas, and it would also increase the speed with which hydrogen could be stored underground even after we switch fully to hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the prefix 724, area code 724-858, please state your name.
Yes, Pike. I'm calling on behalf of Sunrise Los Angeles. First, I wanted to thank you for the work you've put into research how to get LA to 100% renewable energy. I respect that work and I'm grateful. We're facing multiple crises, as everybody on the call knows. The climate crisis is the longest term one. It threatens to completely destabilize human society in a few short decades. So it's going to be one of the most challenging problems that engineers will ever be asked to solve. The first step is fairly obvious, which is just that we must stop making the situation worse. As the 2018 IPCC report states, there's no room in the carbon budget for new fossil fuel power plants. The new Intermountain power plant was planned just a few years ago, and it feels like it was a lifetime, because back then energy storage was prohibitively expensive, and with a few exceptions, few people in public office were calling for anything more bold than a natural gas plant. But today, Intermountain is the last new fossil fuel power plant any California utility is considering constructing. The political landscape is changing as well. 8 elected officials in cities signatory to the Intermountain project have called for rejecting the gas plant and building a 100% renewable facility at Intermountain. That includes LA Council members Paul Koretz, Cynthia Rahman, and Mike Bonin, Glendale City Council members Dan Brotman and Artie Kasakian, Burbank City Council members Constantine Anthony and Nick Schultz, and California Assembly member Laura Friedman. They join 11 neighborhood councils and dozens of neighborhood organizations in Los Angeles and in Utah, urging for a clean energy future. Looking at the political trend, it seems clear that a gas plant will not be built at Intermountain. It's politically untenable in 2021, and it will be unthinkable in 2025. All LADWP gets to decide is how much time it gives itself to plan a renewable solution at the site and whether it makes the decision voluntarily on its own terms or is forced to do so by the City of Los Angeles. LADWP has shown creativity and resourcefulness in 2 proposals before the board today. The feed-in tariff provision, which adds storage capacity, and the virtual net metering program for renters are both exciting plans with the potential to avoid emissions and save Angelino's money. I urge the passage of these programs, and I also urge their expansion. As we consider the NREL study, let's use this as an opportunity to commit to a fossil fuel-free future, starting by refusing to build any new fossil fuel plants. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Caller area code 818, prefix 618, please state your full name. Caller 818-618, please state your full name.
818-618?
Correct.
Lucy Garcia.
Please go ahead.
Right.
I've come before the LADWP many times. I love the LADWP. I used to teach my students how wonderful the efforts that you made to cut per person power and water use was. It's amazing. But the idea, who among the scientific minded can even think of building a new fossil fuel infrastructure now in this planet time? Especially people from California that just burned so drastically in 2020. All of this is due to climate change. You cannot keep on doing this halfway. We have to go all the way. I just have a personal story. Methane, not only are fossil fuels harmful to the climate, they're harmful to us. The Aliso Canyon methane spill started October the 23rd, 2015. I was living within the 5 mile, it was 5 miles from my house. On October the 28th, I woke with painfully itching hands. By morning, my thumb and first 2 fingers on both sides were swollen and red. There were more, for months, I had more than 20 bloody splits all over my hands. What happened to me, along with the much more serious symptoms that were experienced by people closer to the Aliso Canyon, that's what will be visited on the people of Delta, Utah. If you burn methane over there. Maybe they know all of this already. Methane gas plants, leak methane, so do coal plants. So the third point is, this is a publicly owned utility. It has done miracles in the past, as I mentioned. You can engineer a better climate safer system, so do it.
Please wrap up your remarks. Thank you.
I just said thank you.
Thank you. Caller area code 818, prefix 468. Please state your full name.
Hello, my name is Elise Kalfayan. I'm a resident of Glendale calling to oppose all new fossil fuel infrastructure. We need to make our energy systems 100% renewable and green immediately, and the proposed gas plant at Intermountain is contrary to that imperative. LADWP has said in the past that they may have the capacity to make the plant 100% renewable from day one in 2025. Every available resource and every available dollar should be allocated toward that goal. For economic as well as environmental reasons, the board should immediately direct LADWP workers and engineers to do so. Our Glendale City Council members, 2 of them, have called for it to be renewable from day one, as have 2 Burbank City Council members, 3 LA City Council members, and our State Assembly Representative Laura Friedman. I urge the board to commit to this and to put the commitment in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with area code 310, prefix 699.
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Hey, my name is Jessica Craven. I'm a member of the NELA Climate Collective, also an elected member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. And I am calling in, as are so many other people, to say that we, oh golly, first of all, I think you guys do great work, and thank you very much for being so awesome. And I just want to fully oppose doing Intermountain with any kinds of fossil fuels. I highly encourage renewables, but I guess if failing that, we would even support a 100% electrolyzed hydrogen facility. But I am, you know, I have a 11-year-old daughter, and every day I wonder whether, you know, her future is even going to be livable because of climate change. And we are supposed to lead. The proposed gas plant in Utah at Intermountain is a setback, and it would invest in a dying industry. I do support labor, obviously, and there's no sense getting them invested in technology that is dying. We want them to be at the front cutting edge of technology that is thriving and vibrant and expanding. So we don't want a stranded asset. We don't want something that will be uneconomical prior to the end of its operational life. We want 100% renewable. Please, I beg you on behalf of my daughter and all of our kids. This is where we have to go. This is not about pie in the sky. This is about our very survival. Thank you very much, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 646-326. State your name.
Hello? Can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes. Caller 646-326.
Yes, that's me. My name is Emily Spokes. I'm calling from the NELA Climate Collective. I am calling to strongly oppose a new fossil fuel plant at Intermountain. It is not only incredibly irresponsible, it is dangerous. Methane never has and never will be earth-friendly, in fact. And of course, we all know it is one of our most dangerous causes of global warming. I believe it is your moral responsibility to choose a better pathway, because we can obtain this power in other ways. We have the solutions. We are surrounded by intelligent folks who have been doing this work for years in other ways. We have all of the resources we need to be able to power our city. We have citizens who want to do the right thing by committing to no new fossil fuels in every capacity. And as an environmental cancer survivor myself, I can say that kicking the can down the road and believing that you're fine now and finding out 15 years down the road, like the woman who spoke earlier about her hands, you may see symptoms now. You may find out that you have thyroid cancer 10 years from now. And you'll never know why, but you can pretty much assume that it's from a plant like this. I hope that you will give us the opportunity to prove to you that we're willing to do what it takes to survive through this climate crisis, to make the changes, to be earth-friendly, put the environment first. At the least, this plant would be a huge waste of money since the lifespan would be snuffed out sooner than its prior plan. But at the most, foregoing this plant would be a moral boost for our local citizens, as well as a moral obligation for a safer quality of air for the citizens in Utah and anyone else who would be directly harmed by the air quality crisis that this plant will create. Other states look to California as inspiration to follow suit. And so how can we be so responsible in so many other ways, leading the charge, and still be considering this plant? It would be absolutely horrible for our citizens and those in Utah. And just on an unrelated note, this is a very difficult platform to make public comment. I make public comment quite often, as do many of the others on this call. I'm not sure why you guys aren't using Zoom, and I hope you'll consider it. It's much easier to understand. There was quite a lot of confusion in the beginning, and I hope that nobody hung up that was really wanting to make a comment on this this call today. Thank you so much, and be well.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 303, prefix 847, please state your name.
Hi, my name is Yelena War, and I'd like to give a general public comment.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I am also calling today to oppose the construction of all new fossil fuel infrastructure. It is time to go forward with renewables. I believe that one of the most progressive cities in the world should be a leader rather than clinging to the past. And I'm really trying hard to do my part. I switched to an electric car last year after driving my last vehicle pretty much until the wheels fell off it. I have a home charger. I'm using I purchased a home charger specifically for features within the charger's software that allow me to charge my car when the grid is operating on renewables. Even though I rent, I'm working on trying to convince my landlord to install solar panels. But no matter how many individual choices we make, as well as we can possibly make them, we need our infrastructure and our systems and our government, our elected officials, to be leading the way with systemic change. And systemic change looks like no more fossil fuels, no more fracking, no more natural gas, renewables. And I truly believe that if we live in a city that shifts culture, defines what is cool, interesting, and trending for the entire world, we can also live in a city that shifts our energy grid, that shifts what we use to power our homes, our businesses, our vehicles, and that we can be a leader in, something, not that I don't love entertainment, I work in entertainment, but that we can be a leader in something that is going to save a lot more lives and leave the planet a much better place for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller area code 818, prefix 517, please state your full name.
Hello, my name is Sandra Schlapak, and I live in Chatsworth. I've been focused on the climate impacts of fossil fuels for many years, and I support renewable energy resources in any possible way that I can. So therefore, I'm in opposition to the Intermountain Power Plant in Utah. I am incredibly concerned about the future of the planet for my grandchildren and for my children, and therefore feel that every effort should be made to reduce carbon emissions. And I'm part of the Sky Valley Volunteers that's involved in reforestation, and we are increasingly aware of the climate impacts as on our projects as we struggle to keep our trees alive. So, again, I am in opposition to the Intermountain Power Plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, area code 323, prefix 474. Caller, area code 323, prefix 474. Please state your full name.
Oh, hi. My name is Carolina Forney. I'm with the NEEMAN Climate Collective. I'm calling in today to oppose the fossil fuel power plant that LADWP is planning to build. I am a mother to 2-year-old twins, and I am deeply concerned about their future in a world and, you know, a country that is not putting the best foot forward and investing in renewable energy. You know, fossil fuels is a dying industry that has been shown to cause damage to our planet and climate. It's, you know, 42% of the dangerous mercury emissions and sulfur dioxide emissions are caused from power plants. You know, I'm really impressed by LADWP, you know, making the, you know, they've said before that they have capacity for 100% renewable energy, and quite frankly, companies and organizations that lead the way in this renewable energy are noted and remembered in history as heroes and people that are doing the right thing. No one's going to remember the people in a positive way that are setting us backwards. So I'm begging you, please, to do the right thing and invest in our future and not just cause more backwards work. We already know the downsides of climate change. It's been proven in, you know, from scientists, and, you know, our animals are, you know, everything is changing because of this, and we really need to put our best foot forward and do what's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller, area code 714, prefix 745. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Kevin Varzande. I'm calling for general public comment on behalf of, or I'm with the Sunrise Movement. I'd just like to highlight the previous caller's concerns regarding fossil fuel at Utah's Intermountain plant. I oppose all new fossil fuel infrastructure because, you know, due to the IPCC's climate report, we have no remaining carbon budget to be bringing on any new fossil fuel assets. Specifically with natural gas, we know that it's a dying industry. We would just be having a stranded asset, and I don't think LADWP, especially being a publicly owned utility, should be investing in such a economically and environmentally disastrous project. I also want to thank the elected officials and the neighborhood councils, the organizations who've signed on to the letter opposing the gas plant at Intermountain. I do believe that having DWP in a leadership position in opposing new fossil fuels is really critical to our climate future. And if we're to be taken seriously as a progressive city, the least we can do is refuse to bring on a natural gas plant, especially when Los Angeles is the location of the Aliso Canyon gas leak, the worst methane leak in the history of the world. So please, I urge you to oppose natural gas at Intermountain and commit to renewables. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 831, prefix 229, please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Mike Orianda. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you for your work so far. I wanted to oppose all new fossil fuel infrastructure like everyone else. Also, I'd like to support the virtual new metering program and the feed-in tariff program. And I just want to say, my nieces and nephews are 7 and 9, and they had to flee their homes from the wildfires in California, and they just learned in school about climate change, and they asked me, like, well, they're going to stop it, right? The they in that sentence are people like me and people like you. You're in the room. You have the power to slow down climate change today, and we can blame it on bureaucracy and say there's nothing we could do, or you can say I did something, or you can, and it's up to you. It's bad. It's bad business. It's bad for the planet. It's bad for our kids. And when my nieces and nephews ask about climate change and say they're going to stop it, I would love to say yes, we did it together. We can do this powerfully if we stop this fossil fuel plant today. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, area code 810, prefix 240, please go ahead.
Yes, hi. My name is Amy Francis, and I am calling with as a member of the NELA Climate Collective to comment on the Intermountain Power Plant. That last caller almost made me cry with his comments about the kids, because I have a 3-year-old and I expect to get those questions from him too, and I want to be able to say, look, you know, we can stop this, we can do everything, we're going to do everything that we can, but I don't know that that will be the honest truth. But we should do everything that we can do for our children and our future, and that means no more fossil fuels. That means no more fossil fuel infrastructure. If we're going to build a plant, it should be 100% renewable. And I know that we can do this. I have faith that we can do this, and I trust that LADWP will support that and put all of their energy and brains and funds towards making that happen. And we need this to happen. So again, I oppose fossil fuel infrastructure. I support renewable energy, and I really urge you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, area code 310, prefix 951. Please go ahead. State your full name. Caller, area code 310, prefix 951. Please state your full name. Caller, area code 941, prefix 504. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Chris Dower, and I have a comment on the Intermountain Power Plant. I'm a resident of Los Angeles calling to oppose all new fossil fuel infrastructure. We are out of time to address climate crisis, and we must make our electric grid 100% renewable immediately. The proposed gas plant in Utah, Intermountain, is an unnecessary setback that would invest in a dying industry. Burbank Water and Power has called the gas plant a stranded asset that will be uneconomical prior to the end of its operational life. LADWP has said in the past that they may have the capacity to make the plant 100% renewable from day one in 2025. I believe the LADWP's workers and engineers have the skills to solve this problem if they are directed to do so by the board. I also believe that the problem will be easier to solve if we get started on it right away. With so many state and local leaders from the cities of LA, Burbank, and Glendale supporting the Intermountain plant to be 100% renewable from day one, I urge the board to commit to the 2025 deadline and put the commitment in writing so that they can lead the nation in renewables. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Caller, area code 213, prefix 461. Please state your full name. Caller, area code 213, prefix 461. Please state your full name. Caller, area code 323, prefix 428. Please go ahead. State your full name. Caller, area code 323, prefix 428. Please state your full name. Moving to the next caller. Caller, area code 310, prefix 266. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Addison Davis. I'm a student from Los Angeles who opposes all new fossil fuel infrastructure. The danger of this climate crisis is clear, and the gas plant in Utah only inflames that. However, the LADWP has said that the plant can be made 100% renewable by 2025. I urge the board to commit to this deadline. For students like me, the ramifications of this crisis, fires, droughts, and more, will be felt through our entire lives, unless action is taken today. Elected officials, including 3 LA council members and the people of Los Angeles, know that investing in renewables, investing in the future, is the right path. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Caller, area code 408 202. State your name. Caller, area code 408, prefix 202. Please state your name. Moving to the next caller. Caller, area code 323, prefix 835. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Charlie Katzler, calling in to make a general public comment. I'm a resident of downtown LA and member of LA Forward, calling in to oppose the construction of the new gas-fired power plant on the site of the Intermountain Power Plant in Utah. Like the other callers this morning, I believe we must address the climate crisis now by making our electric grid 100% renewable. And since LADWP has the capacity to make the plant 100% renewable from day one in 2025, I'm strongly encouraging them to do just that. I'm grateful for the city council members in Burbank, Glendale, and LA, as well as the other elected officials who have called for the plant to be fully renewable. And I urge the board to follow their lead, commit to the 2025 deadline, and put that commitment in writing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Caller, area code 707, prefix 688. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Nicole Evans. I'm calling in from CD4, Los Feliz. I'm very thankful to have a publicly owned Department of Water and Power. It's really exciting. I've been doing a lot of research. My parents are from Northern California, and it's so infuriating having a PG&E control electricity and power. And so I'm just really grateful for this apparatus. I'm also calling in regards to an Intermountain Power Plant. I'm calling to request that we do not build a new fossil fuel plant in 2025. I really believe that as a publicly owned utility, we have the power to invest in these renewable resources, and we have the moral obligation to do so. My brother, my sister-in-law is having a baby right now, and I'm going to be an aunt, and I'm just thinking, like, am I doing all that I can to ensure that my niece has a future, and is my city doing all that it can to ensure the same? So I'm just really calling to request that, and I would also ask that the DWP consider the virtual net metering program to allow apartment residents to power their homes with solar, and also the feed-in tariff program to make sure that the new addition to LADWP's initiative to use large commercial properties to help balance the grid. So thank you so much for your time. Bye.
Thank you. Caller, area code 949, prefix 326. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Kyle Chin. I'm 17. I work with Sunrise Movement. Thank you so much for your efforts with conservation and climate action. Thank you. However, the IPCC says we cannot build new fossil fuel plants. No more fossil fuels. The new gas plant at Intermountain goes against this. We had significant wildfires this summer, and they will get worse. It will get worse for Black and Brown communities. We must have zero emissions and must have 100% commitment to clean and sustainable energy and labor. I want a livable future with my girlfriend. Please help our generation. I also want to ask you to support the 100% electrolyzed hydrogen facility opening in 2025 and to support the virtual net metering program for solar and a feed-in tariff program for increased energy storage. I believe in your power for change and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 626, prefix 590, state your name.
My name is Cheryl Auger, and I'm the president of Ban Single-Use Plastics. I oppose the new fossil fuel plant. I agree with all of the comments that have been made by other callers. LA should lead. We have seen the dangerous side effects of climate change, and we should learn from this and act quickly. We should only use renewable resources and plants in the future. We should also learn from the past. We need policies that direct local energy generation that doesn't require
Caller? Caller, are you there? Moving to the next caller. Oh, please go ahead. We are having difficulty hearing you. Now we can, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, my name is Cheryl Auger. I oppose the new fossil fuel plant. I agree with all the comments from all the other callers. LA should lead. We've seen the dangers of climate change, and we really need to learn from that and act quickly. We should only use renewable energy sources from here on forward. We should learn from the past. We need policies that direct local generation meaning distributed generation, not using transmission lines, which have caused the dangerous fires that we've seen. Thank you for all you're doing on this.
Thank you. Caller, area code 310-977. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Dylan Purvis. I'm a member of Sunrise Movement LA. I just want to thank you for holding this forum and second what a lot of people have said, that I want to oppose the construction of a new gas-fired powered plant in Intermountain Power in Utah. And also I want to say that, I mean, as we know, right, in 2019, one actually thing that I agree with from Mayor Garcetti is he said that this would be the beginning of the end of natural gas, right, for LADWP, especially because it costs about $5 to $6 billion to renovate the old plant. So I thought that was a great thing. But then building a new plant in Utah just affects our neighbors, and I really disagree with the fact that just because they're not California residents, they also aren't affected by climate change in the same way. I mean, one of my close friends growing up had serious asthma because he lived near an active oil refinery, and it was really hard, participating in sports and whatnot. And it just made me realize the seriousness of this issue. Anyway, to wrap up, overall, I just want to emphasize that, as we know, methane is an extremely dangerous gas that actually, according to a 2016 report by the EPA, stated that it's 87 times more potent than CO2 over 20 years. So I really disagree with the fact that we're continuing to build new plants that get our, that use resources that put the future of our lives in danger. So I hope that you can, stop the building of the Intermountain Power Plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, area code 310, prefix 902. Please state your full name. Caller, area code 310, prefix 902. Please state your full name. Moving to the next caller. Caller, area code 818, prefix 633. Please state your full name.
Hi there, my name is Alexandra Nagy, and I'm with Food and Water Watch. And I'm calling because I want to urge this board to reject building a new gas plant at IPP in Utah. Some of our colleagues in New York are facing a similar situation where they want to build a gas plant at Danskamer, and similarly there, as in here, they are trying to greenwash this proposal by saying they will consider building it out with hydrogen. And this really is just greenwashing, because as of today, there is no power plant that runs on 100% hydrogen. That power plant does not exist in the United States. And so this really is not a pathway forward. This is a false solution, and these are false promises. Like many of the other callers have mentioned, you know, this is really Mayor Garcetti's legacy, and he wants to pretend that this is the beginning of the end of natural gas, but where is his leadership? This is really a failed attempt to move us off of fossil fuels when we're doubling down and building fossil fuels without a real plan to transition to clean energy. And so I urge Mayor Garcetti, I urge the board to really take on the mantle of climate leadership and reject this proposal immediately. And we know we need to transition rapidly to 100% clean energy by 2030 and reject false solutions like biogas and biomass and cap and trade and nuclear energy. And this is the task that lies before us, and this IPP decision is a critical component of that and cannot be ignored. And DWP has a lot of explaining to do on this greenwashing, but not only that, the actions of the past year with the enormous gas leak that lasted for years.
Excuse me, your time has expired. Please wrap up your remarks.
Just basically that gas leak at Sun Valley generating plant is bad enough. That needs to be shut down, and we can't allow more gas plants to be built. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 412, prefix 641, please state your full name. Caller with the area code 412, prefix 641, please state your full name. Moving to the next caller.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I live in Council District 11. I just want to call for, again, as everyone else who I've heard call for no more new fossil fuel infrastructure to be built for LA. So for that reason, I urge for Intermountain, if it is built, to be, built with 100% clean energy sources. And that's, of course, for all the reasons that were stated before, for the sake of our human civilization, which is threatened by global heating and climate change. We just need to stop burning fossil fuels. And also for the sake of, the residents around the Intermountain site who would otherwise suffer from pollution and a lot of the health effects that we know are caused by that kind of pollution with natural gas. Natural gas is a declining industry, a dying industry, like all fossil fuels, and it will likely be more expensive to operate that plant soon after it opens, instead of planning for clean renewable sources from the start. Also, want to urge for expanding the virtual net metering program to allow apartment residents to power their homes from solar energy, and support the feed-in tariff program to help balance the grid. Thanks.
Thank you. Caller, area code 626, prefix 232. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Ben Schwartz, and I'm the policy manager for the Clean Coalition, which is a nonprofit focused on energy resilience and promoting local resources on the distribution grid. And the reason I'm calling today is to support item 14, the FIT Plus program, and just to acknowledge that this is going to be a very important program, not only for LADWP, but also as something that can be touted for the rest of the state in regulatory proceedings. The Clean Coalition is particularly excited about the inclusion of energy storage and believes that it will be
I guess the easiest way to say it is something that should definitely be expanded as soon as possible. The more energy that can be included, the more resilient the distribution grid will be, and the better the penetration of local renewables will be. So I urge the board to approve the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller, area code 323, prefix 807. Please state your full name. Caller, area code 323, prefix 807. Please state your full name. Moving to the next caller.
Hi, this is Jasmine.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Jasmine. Thank you. I'm Jasmine Vargas. I am a senior organizer with Food and Water Watch Food and Water Action. I was actually hoping to speak on item 8B of the management report.
Yes, please go ahead.
This is pertaining to the Los Angeles 100% renewable energy study, the LA 100 by NREL's Energy Laboratory. I am an advisory group member and have been participating for the last 3 years with LADWP staff and a group of the organizing group and myself are now in a position where we are going to be getting recommendations and scenarios, primary results soon. I wanted to address the board today as an advisory group member and as a community activist that I urge you to do everything possible to make this a community friendly and increase the outreach and create opportunities for people to participate. This study, which frankly no one except people that are probably on this call that have been following IPP and other issues of LADWP knows that it will be addressing the question of getting to 100% renewable energy by 2030. However, the study has, unfortunately, false solutions like renewable energy credits, nuclear and biomass, biogas, and others that are being considered that are not going to get us to real renewable by 2030, which is our demand. Furthermore, the process and the study itself has had a lot of voice from the corporations and companies that have been creating the most emissions and pollution in our community. And I want you all, and I wanted to be in public record to know that the communities of Los Angeles should and must have a voice in how we get to 100% renewable as soon as possible, because that's what you're hearing today. That's the demands that you're hearing today, and I hope that you take this as an opportunity to engage the city of LA and to increase the real solutions like energy efficiency, local solar and storage, and demand response. And like I support the net metering virtual pilot program because it's part of those real solutions. And I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Caller, area code 323, prefix 572. Please state your full name.
Hello, my name is James Crisafulli. I'm calling on behalf of the Sunrise Movement to make general comment. I'm calling to oppose the construction of a new natural gas plant at the Intermountain site. First, I just want to say I really admire the research that LADWP has done on the site and the capacity for renewable energy and hydro, and I respect that you've identified that the site could potentially be 100% renewable, even though that would be ambitious. And I just want to say now is precisely the time for ambitious action, given the urgency of climate change. Climate change and air pollution are ravaging communities in Los Angeles, and we cannot simply export our air pollution to other communities as we would be doing with the Intermountain site. We must push ourselves to achieve the boldest climate solutions possible right now. I personally am afraid for my own future, and I am begging our leadership to be leaders on climate and to do everything in your power to prepare ourselves for a sustainable and a livable future. And echoing all the comments from others about their children and their future. So I urge the committee to commit to making the Intermountain site 100% renewable by 2025 and being more bold on climate going forward and being a leader. So I thank you for your time, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 717, please state your full name.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Miran Kalajian, and I am actually a member on the advocacy group for the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and I'm also a member on the Energy Committee as well. I'm just reaching out regarding the burning fossil fuels, which are a number of air pollutants and harmful to both the environmental and public health. Non-renewable fossil fuels are non-renewable sources of energy, unlike solar power and wind energy. And natural gas could cause even more problems, especially in our neighborhood with the Aliso Canyon. And I'm hoping that we can take a platform where to not proceed forward with this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 951, please go ahead. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 951, please go ahead. Moving to the next caller, caller with the area code 213, prefix 461, please state your full name. Caller with the area code 213, prefix 461, please state your full name. Moving to the next caller, caller area code 310, prefix 902, please state your full name. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 902, please state your full name. Moving on to the next caller, caller with the area code 818-927, please state your full name. Caller, area code 818, prefix 927, please state your full name. Caller with the area code 818, prefix 927, please state your full name. Caller with the area code 818, prefix 913, please state your full name. Caller with the
Campagna.
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Monica Campagna, and I am a resident of Glendale, California, and a steering member of the community-based organization Glendale Environmental Coalition. And I'm calling to make a general public comment to oppose the construction of a new gas-fired power plant on the site of Intermountain Power Plant in Utah. I support instead replacing the coal plant with renewables, instead including a potential hydrogen facility. I understand that this goal may be ambitious, but it has been deemed feasible, and I believe LADWP's workers and engineers have the skills and knowledge to meet this challenge. The city of Glendale is currently studying ways to get to 100% clean energy by 2030, and this source of energy is part of our portfolio here, so our goals are interconnected. We need you. We are out of time for gas bridges, and I ask the Commission to support moving forward straight away to build the clean energy future we need to support the survival of our species. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Caller, area code 818, prefix 458, please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Katerina Glasser. I'm calling also to not go forward using anything but electrolyzed hydrogen facilities. We can do better than that, and fossil fuel is the past. And our city is polluted enough. We don't need to create more to the pollution, and there's already plenty of other alternatives out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 213-905. Please state your full name. Caller with the area code 213, prefix 905. Please state your full name. Moving to the next caller. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 902. Please state your full name. Caller, please go ahead. Moving to the next caller. Caller 310, prefix 951. Please state your full name.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Bryant, and I'm a board member of the Harbor Gateway South Neighborhood Council. But I'm speaking as an individual and in support of Sunrise LA today. Thank you for the research LADWP has been doing on renewable energy, but I'm calling to oppose all new fossil fuel infrastructure. We're out of time to address the worsening climate crisis and must make our electric grid 100% renewable immediately. The proposed gas plant runs counter to the objective of combating climate change. The science is there. Fossil fuels fuel the eroding of our environment and climate change is only getting worse. From the annual devastating wildfires and record-breaking hot summers, we've already seen some of the consequences of climate change, and Black and brown communities suffer the most. In the neighboring community of Wilmington, for example, many suffer from nosebleeds, allergies, and watery eyes due to the tainted air. In the long term, folks have an increased risk for cancer and asthma, among other health ailments. So the issue of combating climate change is also a racial justice issue, and exporting our pollution to other communities in Utah would just be unjust. As one of the largest cities in the country with a publicly owned utility, we have both a responsibility and opportunity to lead in transitioning into a carbon-free, environmentally sustainable economy. LADWP has said in the past that they may have the capacity to make the plants 100% renewable from day one in 2025. I believe LADWP's workers and engineers have the skills to solve this problem if they are directed to do so by the board. I also believe the problem will be easier to solve if we get started on it right away. I also want to quickly voice my support for the virtual net metering program and the feed-in tariff program. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Caller area code 310, prefix 947. Please state your full name. Caller, please state your full name. Moving on to the next caller. Caller area code 818, prefix 415. Please state your full name.
Hello, my name is Vera Valentine. I'm a native of Colorado, and I've been living in Los Angeles since January of 2004. And as a child, I traveled from Colorado with my family to California to visit family and pass through Delta, where I understand the Intermountain plant is to be considered. Many times, we even broke down there once, and the mechanics opened up the shop for us on a Sunday and got us back on the road. So I have really fond memories of the area, and I am just learning of this plan this morning. I did a quick research, or Google search, and the first thing that came up, Utah at Intermountain, was healthcare, and that really struck me. I understand that there's potential for a green facility by 2025, and I'm curious why, if we're not going to build it here, why Delta? So I oppose this proposal and ask the board to reconsider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Caller area code 310, prefix 902. Caller area code 310, prefix 902. Moving to the last caller, caller area code 443, prefix 610. President McCLAIN-HILL, all public comment is now closed. President McCLAIN-HILL. All public
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't get back off mute and on camera. Thank you, Susie. We will now move to the General Manager's report.
Thank you, President McCLAIN-HILL. Can you hear me okay? I think I'm coming in okay. Thank you. I just have a couple things to mention. So first, I'd like to just echo your comments briefly about Councilmember Tom LeBlanc. Your comments were spot on in terms of what he meant to us in the department. And while Tom was a good friend of mine, I want to remind all of our employees about how much he meant to them and how much they really meant to him. As you and the other board members are aware, Tom was a regular in the building. He would show up at board meetings. Even when he was a council member, he would find a way to pop over, an impromptu visit, and afterwards certainly would show up and comment on things, largely in support of what we were working on and what we were doing, and truly in support of our employees, often recognizing them or mentioning things that he had seen them do, and you know, just in their regular jobs and how well they carried themselves. But Tom was also very pervasive around the building. He would wander around and visit the people that he knew well here and go floor to floor and really, you know, keep up the friendships and the working relationships that he had built over the years. And so he was a familiar sight and very much part of the department. You know, he spent a couple years here as an employee working for us, but he was so much more than that. And really enjoyed, you know, stopping by the building and seeing people. Tom, as you mentioned, probably celebrated life on his day-to-day way. He carried himself more than anybody I've ever known, and he really celebrated the lives of other people. I can't remember a time that we were anywhere that he didn't have something to say and want to steal the mic. After he was in office, I recall the number of times that he would pop in and always want to you know, say something to add to the conversation. And you know, we will miss him greatly. I remember that when a lot of us here, myself included, others, when he was cleaning out his office after being in council for, you know, more than a decade, he was going through the closet, and we all received packages of memorabilia and things that he'd collected over the years having to do with the department, and notes to us reminding us of the history that we were part of and that we had to carry on as part of our day-to-day jobs. And so he was a great supporter. He was one of probably the biggest cheerleaders we've ever had as a company. And he also was always a constant reminder of what our obligations were to the people of Los Angeles and to carry on the great history that our founding fathers and mothers had that really set this department up to be what it is today. And so I have a lot of personal stories. I won't go into those, but we spent a lot of time, Tom spent a lot of time on the aqueduct up in the Owens Valley, certainly with us and projects around Silver Lake and Griffith Park and other places of the city. He was so engaged and will be so missed, but I want to remind all the employees here how much he loved them and how much he cared for every single one of them and what they did, and really appreciated the work that we do as a department and as the individuals that make it up. So thank you for giving me a moment to express that. The last two things I wanted to say, just to let you know, and maybe Reiko or Rick want to comment on these. We did have some very good news on our power system. We had beginning of 2023 mandate to get 10,000 electric vehicles, commercial electric vehicle chargers throughout the city between us and our partners. Commercial meaning they're publicly available, not at someone's home. We actually surpassed that 2 years ahead of schedule. We have over 11,000 chargers on the streets today. And this has put us ahead of schedule to get to 25,000 charging stations by 2025. So certainly the challenge, as we know, with electric vehicles and electrification of the transportation grid has been to make sure that people can charge vehicles, especially when they're away from home or if they're in multifamily residential settings where they may not have their own ability to plug in. So, and also making sure that those chargers are available throughout all parts of town. So that's been a great success. I want to commend the power system for the work that they've done on that. And we've got over 8,000 charger rebates have been issued, and it's been a great project. Reiko, I don't know if you want to add anything to those comments on that.
I would just say that we just have a phenomenal team, and I really appreciate it was a mid-rate plan that we really launched the kickoff to increase the amount of electric vehicle chargers, because we see that as one of the best ways to reduce carbon, as well as the local impact to local air quality. So we had a very aggressive goal. We had a great team working on this. We had support and added staff to be able to do this, but we're not done. We're moving on past this goal and looking to set the next goal, because we know if the infrastructure is not sufficient, it will not encourage people to go electric. And importantly, as with all our programs, it's important that we do look at the equity component and that we ensure that all our customers will have access to be able to charge their vehicles, whether, if they're in multi-unit dwellings or disadvantaged communities, that they still have access to those. And one of the greatest things is, even though we've installed 10,000 publicly available chargers, the customers and LADWP rates have not been impacted by this, because it's funded by an excess source that's based on the number of EV chargers that we have installed to encourage more and more deployment of that infrastructure.
Thank you, Reiko. The only other thing I'd like to make the board aware, and I'll let Rich chime in, is that, as you know, other than that one deluge we had recently for rain, we are looking at a La Nina year here in Los Angeles or in the state of California, and statewide water resources right now, as far as snowpack goes, are at about 50% of normal. And actually, our aqueduct, with some winter storms we had after Christmas, just came up to 27% of normal, which at this point ties us with the lowest year on record. So there's a lot of the year ahead. But Rich, do you want to comment on what we look like for water resources and what we plan to do to manage through this?
Sure. Yeah, nothing much has changed since I reported on, I guess, in December, where, as Marty said, just holding at our record low in terms of snowpack on our own resources in Eastern Sierra. The Northern Sierras isn't much better, and overall, it looks like it's going to end up, obviously being a below normal year, which again is not uncommon. It's more common to be below average than above. To manage that, though, as I said, because of the great conservation efforts of not only Angelenos but really all of Southland within Metropolitan's service district, all that water that they have concerned is there in storage, and Metropolitan still has a record amount of storage, and that storage is there just for not a rainy day, but for a dry day or a dry year. So we're in no threat to be in a drought this year, meaning where we won't have enough water to operate as a city. So we're looking good in that regards, and we're still ramping up our efforts to help our customers throughout the remainder of this year through our water conservation programs, whether indoors or in their landscaping, to help them to use less water and conserve even more, which is part of our long-range plans. So I will let you know more in our February meeting, because I plan to go up and do a snow survey at the end of this month, although I don't know if I'll be out there in flip-flops or in snow boots. So we'll see how much snow's out there. I'll let you know.
Thanks, Rich. And we have a COVID update scheduled as a regular briefing, so I'll hold on that. So unless there's any questions, that's all of my report.
I'm sorry, are there any commission questions regarding department operations?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to item 4, introduction of motions. Is there anything to be submitted at this time? Hearing none. Comments from ratepayer advocates. Dr. Pickle?
Good morning. As a former resident of Council District 4, I met Tom LaBonge in about 1990, and I remember that first conversation as well as the last conversation I had with him on one of the City Hall elevators as he was taking a group from one of the local high schools up to the City Hall tower, the top of the City Hall tower. We'll all remember Tom for his enthusiasm, and I spent a day last week contemplating Tom LaBonge and Tommy Lasorda meeting at the pearly gates and having quite a conversation. So with those thoughts in mind, I'll move back to business and say we'll have comments on 8B, on the NREL study, and a brief comment on item 13, and I have circulated written note on suggested changes for items 14 and 15 regarding reporting on the cost benefit of those initial pilot studies. That's all.
Thank you, Fred. Moving to item number 6, discussion with neighborhood council. Susie, is there anything? Do we have anything on item 6?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the item on today's board agenda.
Thank you. Then we'll move to our consent calendar, and I think we will, at this time, we'll be hearings items 14, which has been pulled by Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, and item 15 pulled by Commissioner Reyes. That would leave items 10, 11, 12, 13, and 16 for approval. Is there a motion to approve? Approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Susie, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner BARAD? I believe she was having technical difficulties. Commissioner BARAD? Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Yes.
Commissioner LEHRER?
Yes.
Commissioner Reyes?
Yes.
Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL?
Yes.
4 ayes.
Terrific. That motion passes, and we will now move to our management report. And just looking at the time and giving the potential length of the 100% renewable study, I'd like the wildfire mitigation plan to stand ready, but it may be moved to the next board agenda, again, depending on where we end up in terms of time at the end of the LA Renewable Energy Study. With that, can we begin with item 8A?
Thank you. We'll be brief on our COVID update. This is a follow-up from information that we provided to the board at the emergency meeting that was called after, between Christmas and New Year's. I think the team is on. I can't see everyone, but hopefully the team is on. I'm going to turn over to Nazir in just a moment, and we'll let the board know the status of the different topics that we brought up. I did want to bring to the board's attention, we had very sad news yesterday. We had a third employee pass away from COVID over the weekend. And so we had one employee in middle of December, and then one in early January, one last weekend. This is very, very difficult news, and of course, very difficult for the rest of the workforce. It reminds us the seriousness of this disease and how we really have to take it seriously and look out for ourselves and our coworkers and our families. And so we hope that the measures that we're taking and that we've introduced at the board's encouragement, presented at the last meeting, and the steps we've taken in the last week will continue to keep our workforce as safe as possible and to prevent as much spread as we can. But I did want to make the board aware of that tragic news. And so, but we are certainly reaching out to the families and engaging them as much as possible in the tough times. Nazir, I'll turn it over to you to let the board know the status of where we're at. We'll try to be quick because the board has a very busy calendar, but we'll hit the highlights and then follow up with any questions the board members may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Marty. Can you hear me?
Yes, a little louder, please.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Nazir Fazli, Chief Safety Officer, and today I will be giving an update on the LADWP COVID response plan. First, our current status. As of today, since beginning of pandemic, we've had 874 employees who tested positive for COVID-19. Of those, the month of December we saw a sharp increase in the number of positives reported. We had 461 cases reported in the month of December alone. Currently, we have 198 employees that have tested positive. They are on paid administrative leave. And we have 65 employees who are close contacts, and they're also on paid administrative leave. Our resource office, all of our new staff completed their training. The backlog that we were experiencing before has been eliminated. All the calls are being returned the same day or the very next day. All the cases are assigned for contact tracing the same day. This is a significant improvement because contact tracing is crucial in identifying close contacts and removing employees from workplace to control transmission of COVID in the workplace. Next slide, please. Since the last report, our new COVID-19 task force was assembled. We meet bi-weekly, twice a week. We review and evaluate policy, COVID-19 policy and plans. We identify deficiencies and opportunities for improvement. We implement policies. And the membership includes the Office of GM, Office of Safety, Office of Communication, Medical Director, Corporate Health and Safety, and Resource Office. And in addition to that, we also added coordinator of testing to the group. And coordinator of testing, they plan, organize, and coordinate testing for all DWP employees. So today we have Mike Wooding here, and he will give us a report on LADWP testing strategies. Mike, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead. Next slide. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Wooding. I'm the coordinator for COVID testing for LADWP. Basically, we're taking a three-pronged approach to testing at the department. We're doing a rapid test, which is the Veritas antigen test. We're in the process of securing a contract for that right now. I've been working with supply chain, and we're very close to getting that contract in force. We do that, provides on-site testing with rapid results for employees. Right now, a little update, it says 3 locations are scheduled on a weekly basis, ramping up to 17. I've added 2 additional facilities this morning, so we're up to 5. By the end of the month, I hope to have all of our critical operating facilities up to speed for rapid testing on site. In addition to that, we have a Fulgent PCR administrator test contract that is now in force. So that allows us to get bulk tests in batches of 100 that are going to be stored at our safety warehouse in Sun Valley. We also have the ability to do some, and that $5 million contract is in force at this time. We've also partnered with LA City Fire in a cooperative agreement. They'll also provide on-site testing, and that's open to any employees who care to join us. Right now, we're doing 3 a month. We did one on the 7th of January where we had 205 tests were administered, and the next one is scheduled for Tuesday, the 14th of January. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Mike. So next slide. Go ahead, either Mike or Nazir.
Mike, this one's yours, Nazir.
This is how we communicate for testing purposes. When there's a testing opportunity available, we communicate with masses with bulletins and emails to make sure that our employees are aware of testing sites and testing opportunities so they can take advantage of that. So this is just an example of one of our form of communication with employees to notify them of opportunities for testing. Next slide, please.
So following testing, the next step, of course, is vaccinations. And in accordance with the directive from the city, last week we submitted our list of vaccinations by priority based on the guidelines handed down from County Department of Public Health. So we submitted a list of the roughly 11,000 names on that. It's close to a quarter of the city workforce that we just submitted for vaccines, and that is being put together along with other city departments in the priority list to make sure that city employees are able to get vaccinated so we can get back to normal business as quickly as possible. As you probably saw in the news, and actually this goes well with the fact that we're ramping up our own ability to get testing for our employees, Dr. Stadium ceased doing testing as of last night and is being converted to a vaccination facility as part of the city's plan to be able to administer working towards 20,000 vaccines a day, as well as other facilities that can give out vaccines. The city is actively working on its vaccination distribution plan, and part of that plan includes the vaccination of city employees and critical workers so we can support the rest of the community, both in our regular work as well as the other city departments doing their work and being able to continue to support the rest of the city. We have identified a number of employees at critical facilities, particularly where we have control rooms or places where a large infection may take out a select group of people who do specialized tasks, particularly in both water and power systems where they're doing system monitoring and controlling. We are in the process of getting those folks fit in with, hopefully, along with the police and fire. Vaccine rollout has been a little bumpy. It's a lot of learning that's going on. One of the things that everyone's discovered is that when they defrost the vaccines, that it's never possible to match up the number of people scheduled and the number of vaccines available. So at the end of the vaccine day, there tends to be vaccinations available. So we are working to fill those gaps with our most critical employees so we can make sure that the places that we are at greatest risk of outbreak or of a bad impact due to an outbreak can be covered. So at this point, there's some official schedules going around, but they believe that we'll be vaccinating in phase 1B. 1A is, of course, the medical personnel and some emergency workers. Now, more people are able to give vaccines, including EMTs, which includes not only the fire department paramedics, but in the city of Los Angeles, as Chief Terrazas noted yesterday, all firefighters are EMTs. And so that dramatically increases the number of people who can give vaccines. And so they're hoping to be in phase 1B toward the latter half of January and be getting that phase done in January, beginning of February. So I think we're going to see a significant rollout in vaccinations to the city at large, as well as to our employees at large, and hopefully help the city get back on its feet as quickly as possible. Go ahead, Nazir. Is that anything else? We got to Joe now?
Next one is Joe. Is Joe here?
Yeah. So Joe Ramal is going to talk about our communication plans, which is a critical piece that's filled a big gap for us. So go ahead, Joe.
Good morning, Commissioners. And you'll recall at the last meeting, as they pull up these slides, we talked about a website for employees that we were going to launch, a publicly facing website to make it easier for our employees to access information on the COVID-19 response, things like vaccinations and tests. We launched the website. I'll go ahead and flip through the slides here as we go. We launched the website last Monday and announced it to employees a week ago today. We have had a good experience in terms of those who are visiting the site, spending a significant amount of time looking through the information and materials, which is encouraging. Again, that site, as so you know, is LADWP-employeeinfo.com. Go ahead and go to the next site, next page. We did incorporate an email and text sign up. So the site is fully functional with both the site itself with all of the information posted and easily find information easy to find, as well as the email capability and text functionality. We only have about a little under 900 registrants, which is not what we want it to be. And so our next focus really is going to be in how we can promote the site and get more people to sign up for it. I'll preview for you some of that promotion in just a moment. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Since the launch, we've sent out 3 newsletter updates. These newsletters include the latest information, for example, the testing that occurred last week here at JFB and how to sign up, the message from the general manager. One that we sent out late yesterday was actually the website tutorial. We sent that out both within the department's email system as well as through the system as well, to encourage people to watch how to visit the site, how to use it, what can be found there. So we've had, there are people who have double emails as well, so you'll see that, in fact, we have more recipients than folks who've signed up. We have a pretty decent click rate for our employees. We want it to be higher, but 40% and 30% on those emails in terms of employees who opened them up and read them. We have also included all of our managers and supervisors on the distribution list. And if we, at some point, if we do see that people aren't signing up for it, we can load in employee emails into the system. We did this initially to test it out on a voluntary basis, and we'd like to encourage people to understand what the site is for and to go and choose to sign up, and also to give us their cell phone for text notifications. We sent out one text notification. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Last week, and that was to announce the new testing site that's coming up this coming week. I think some of you may be on that distribution list, and it came through, I believe, later last week. We want to use this for important messaging so that we don't wear people out and have them choose not to accept or receive the text. So we tested it out, got it launched up through the NICOLE system, and everything is functioning well when people receive that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We're going to deploy signage to all of our workplaces to promote the site. And this is real easy with a QR code that folks can hold their smartphone up to, and it'll take them right to the site where they can view it, hopefully bookmark it, as well as sign up to receive the email notifications and text notifications. That signage will be going out this week and getting it deployed as quickly as we possibly can. If you go to the next slide. Thank you.
Yeah, it's me.
And Madam President, I was going to show a video that's the tutorial video that went out yesterday, but in the interest of time, I wanted to ask if you wanted to play that now, or perhaps the board could visit the site and surf around and look at the information.
I've already looked at it for the link you sent yesterday, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And that's
we can look at it on our own time and save the moment in the meeting. But thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Looks pretty good. Thank you.
So that's our update. Unless you have any questions, just want to make sure you're aware of the highlights that we've made a lot of progress in the last week.
Are there any questions this time?
I just have one question. Marty, are we deploying the nasal swabs or the oral swabs? Because there's been a report about the false positives on the oral ones.
So that's with the swabs that we have at the fire department are the oral swabs, and there's a lot. The city's still using those, even though the county backed away. But right now, FDA and the company are working on that. And a lot of it really just depends on how well the person does it. It's not the process; it's the patient. And if the patient doesn't test themselves properly or swab it right, then you get a bad result, which could be true for any kind of test. But the city's standing by it. They've identified over 92,000 positives using that test. It's been very successful, and I think that we'll see something probably within the next week at the most about the validity of using that testing method. I believe Mike told me that the Fulgen has both methods available. Although I would argue that to do a proper nasal swab, if you have one done by a medical professional, I don't think most people will put themselves through that amount of discomfort. So I'm not sure that it's any better when it's self-administered than the oral swab would be. So we're continuing the course with what we had. The city's staying the course the same way. And I think that we'll find out that it's really down to just making sure that people do it correctly. And I don't know, Dr. Israel's on board if she wants to offer anything about that. We talked at length about this yesterday as well.
Mr. Adams, the problem with curative, or the issue with curative, it's not a problem, is the false negative. And all tests, no test is perfect. So with any of these tests, there are false negatives. And with curative, it may have been that it was too early or too late to catch the virus. So aside from getting a good specimen, one needs to have enough viral load. So again, the message is testing is good, but it's not, does not mean that you are not, you haven't been exposed. It's not perfect, okay? So it's a snapshot in time. That's one thing. The second comment I want to make is I hope that we can promote vaccinations. I'm a little concerned about the outside world and their declination rate. But thank you.
I do have one question. Do you have a sense of whether LA or at least the department would get either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine?
Yes, the LA Fire Department is using the Moderna vaccine. I was vaccinated on Friday. It went very smoothly at Fire Station 4.
Great. Thank you.
I had no reaction.
That's good to hear.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
This is Commissioner Lehrer. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. I'm curious, where does the senior management, as like Marty and others on the call, where do they fit in on the vaccine schedule?
There are a handful of us that will get the vaccine early with a select group of employees that are in critical facilities. And honestly, the biggest rationale for that is to try to send a positive message to the folks who are wondering if they should or shouldn't get a vaccine. Otherwise, most people will fit in the 1B. The bulk of our workforce fits in the 1B, so it should probably be happening later this month. We had an opportunity at 1 in the morning the other day with vaccines that were going to expire to scramble and get some people vaccinated last week. So I also got a chance to get vaccinated at 1:30 in the morning, and so I had my first shot. And like I say, we're working with the mayor's office closely to coordinate that as we're finding out the realities of how vaccines roll out and what happens at the end of the day. So we're coordinating that. We have our crews ready to send and get vaccinated. But we have a select number of us that are there mostly not only just not because we're so important, but because it's important for us to send a message of support, as Dr. Israel did, because the vaccines are probably the only way we see our way out of the pandemic at this point.
No, absolutely. I just want to make sure some of us stay responsible for everything. So I appreciate the report, and the sooner the better for anybody and everybody, but we understand.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of questions and observations. First, I appreciate the report and the significant progress that's been made, and want to commend staff on their effort to respond to this escalating crisis. I do have a couple of questions. Will be interested in at our next board meeting in an update, particularly on the outreach, just to see how that's going. Joe loved the site and certainly the plan, so I'll be interested in how our efforts to communicate with employees about what's available is going. And then, Marty, I will be interested in understanding how we, separate and apart from the vaccine, what efforts we're making to enforce mask wearing. In a number of conversations, there have been reports of, the difficulty or reports on certain staff members being unwilling or to wear masks. And I want to make sure that this department has a very clear and very what is the word? A very clear, not only policy, but a very specific and effective method of enforcing that policy up to and including immediately sending people home. And I do appreciate that in some instances that will mean that we will need to have backups for how we replace those members of our team. I expect that you would work with labor with respect to this, but I'm particularly struck by the reports of COVID from members of Congress who were forced to quarantine, last week as a part of that unmentionable incident with other members who refused to wear masks. Mask wearing, regardless of how people feel or what they believe, is not really a recommendation or an option at work, and we have to make that clear. In people's personal lives, they are free to do whatever they want to do, although I would hope and pray that everyone would do everything, no matter how inconvenient, to protect themselves and others. But at work, we simply cannot have employees exposed to COVID unnecessarily because we are tolerating people, other employees who, for whatever reason, do not want to wear their mask. So I just want to underscore my concern around that and want to make sure that the department is resolute. This is not an option, not a matter of freedom or personal freedom, and certainly as it relates to accountability, we have to be able to enforce a mask mandate while people are in the workplace.
Yes, I fully agree, and we'll have a report on that for you for next week, and as well as also the challenge that we'll be facing as vaccines roll out, that we'll still be wearing masks until most of the world is vaccinated. So,
no, there's no question. I mean, and one of the things that people like that we said sometimes gets lost, and is that while it's clear that vaccines are effective against COVID, against COVID contraction, it's unclear that they're effective against or that they prevent COVID transmission. And until there's clarity around those issues, we will continue to need to be vigilant about mask wearing. Is there anything else?
No, ma'am. We're all good.
All right. Thank you so very much. We can now move to item 8B.
Good morning, Madam President and esteemed commissioners. So today we are pleased to provide an update on the LA 100 study. This comprehensive industry-leading study aims to identify the investments required to get to 100% clean energy. It will assess reliability, resiliency, costs, infrastructure upgrades, workforce needs, impacts to air quality, health, and environmental justice. There are no decisions to be made today, as this is simply an update of the LA study as we begin to do public outreach and to solicit additional input prior to finalizing the study in a couple more months. Under the leadership of this board, the mayor, and the city council, and in an effort to achieve the ambitious goals outlined in the mayor's Green New Deal, the LA 100 study began in earnest in 2017, and it has included years of incredible technical and detailed work by the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, LADWP staff, and a dedicated and diverse stakeholder advisory group. The LA 100 study assesses several 100% scenarios that will provide invaluable insight and understanding of the trade-offs and risks between environmental goals, reliability and resiliency, social equity goals, and affordability, as yesterday's power system is transformed to meet our customers' expectations in the future. These insights and trade-offs will be shared with the public through outreach scheduled later this month, and at the conclusion of the study and the outreach, the feedback received as well as the LA100 study itself, will be incorporated into LADWP's development of a new power plan. Among the key insights of the LA100 study, while all roads lead to 100%, getting there can mean very different things in terms of cost, environmental impacts, equity, and reliability. At the conclusion of this study, we expect that it will demonstrate that 100% can be achieved by industry-leading workforce such as LADWP in a way that is reliable, economical, equitable, and in a way that other utilities can replicate. And while we have been working diligently to complete this groundbreaking LA100 study that takes a longer view of the transition to 100%, LADWP has continued to transform our power system. Recent examples include this board's approval of the Elan Solar plus Storage, Red Cloud Wind Power Purchase Agreement, as well as the expanding local solar programs such as the FIT Plus and Virtual Net Energy Metering that was approved today, as well as encouraging and supporting electric vehicle adoption. Staff has worked diligently over the last year on the Clean Grid LA plan that will address the nearer term choices that we must make that sets us on the right course, regardless of scenario, that aligns with our LADWP study. And we will be presenting a status update on that Clean Grid LA plan and those nearer term challenges at the next board meeting. I'd like to specifically acknowledge appreciation for the significant contributions to folks that supported this effort, specifically NREL and their first-rate staff, Joan Isaacson from Kearns and West to help facilitate all the advisory group meetings, each and every stakeholder on the advisory group, the mayor and council district staffs and board members that have participated in or observed pieces of this process going through, LADWP staff, including many disciplines from power system planning, Clean Grid LA, communications, finance, executive, and many others, staff from the Office of Public Accountability, labor, and many others that have committed dozens of hours of their personal time in support of this effort. So for today's presentation, I would like to introduce Jacqueline Cochran of NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, who will be presenting this LA100 update.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. And thank you very much for including this topic in the agenda. I'm really excited to share progress, especially as we're getting so close to the end. And I would also like to start with a big thank you to Reiko and her team. They have been extraordinary in providing support for the study in terms of sharing data, sharing their technical expertise, and supporting our community engagement. Next slide, please. Just to refresh for those new to the study, the Los Angeles 100% Renewable Energy Study is designed to answer a series of questions. What are the pathways and costs to achieve 100% renewable electricity supply while at the same time electrifying key end uses and maintaining reliability? What are the potential benefits to the environment and health? How might local jobs and the economy change? And how can environmental justice communities benefit and be part of the solution? Slide 3. So our team at NREL is really excited, even this many years in, to be participating in this study because it's truly groundbreaking. This is the first study of its kind that looks at how you get to 100% renewable energy with such a large system that must balance electricity supply and demand at all times. So this is not just how can we make sure every hour of the year stays renewable, but how can we stay renewable and reliable when things go wrong on the system. This study also, for the first time, integrates a number of different modeling tools to help address the full complexity of the questions. And so we're looking from beginning to end, starting with, how is the demand for electricity changing all the way through air quality analysis. And then we also have unprecedented detail in the modeling, resolution, and simulations. As a reminder, LA100, the study, is not going to present any recommendations or suggest policies. We look at different options for getting to 100% renewable energy and to understand the trade-offs in terms of cost, environment, reliability, and so forth. But our goal is to provide the LA community the information you all need to move forward. Next, slide 4. This graph is hard to read, but it's our internal guide for how we're navigating the interactions between our models. And I'm sharing this just to illustrate the depth of and breadth of the modeling that's underpinning the study. Each box represents a different modeling team at NREL and our partners, for example, with USC. And the lines represent the flow of data and information that feed from one model into another. And so this is, we're managing all this with our high performance computing, and we would, this complexity is enormous, and I can't underscore enough how the challenge of making sure that all our models are using consistent assumptions and data. Next slide, please, slide 5. Our advisory group is at the heart of the study. They have been incredibly generous with their time. They share their expertise, share their insights, share what's important to them. They have helped shape the study and changed it in a few ways, which I'll show in the next slides. And we meet quarterly with this group. Next slide, please. One of the roles of the advisory group is helping create the scenarios that shape the focus of the study. Each scenario, it represents a different type of future. All the scenarios share the same end goal, 100% renewable electricity, but they differ in what the assumptions of that future might be. Some differ by what the demand for electricity will be, and others differ based on what the supply options for the renewable energy could be. So let's start with the demand. The demand differences are represented in that blue, green, and orange section, where blue represents the demand for electricity that grows moderately. So for example, 30% of vehicles on the grid in 2045 are plug-in electric. The green scenarios represent a high growth in electrification and high growth in flexibility on the grid. So here we assume most all buildings are electrified. 80% of vehicles on the road in 2045 are plug-in electric. And that the charging can occur during the day when we have abundant solar generation, so that the charging itself is more flexible. And then on that final column, we have our stress scenarios, which represents all the electrification that comes with the green high scenarios, but with none of the flexibility. So this presents the most challenging conditions to manage for the grid. Within these moderate and high demand projections, we look at 4 different supply options for meeting the 100% target. The first is SB 100, modeled off Senate Bill 100. And notably with this scenario, some natural gas generation remains online and can be offset by renewable electricity credits. The second scenario, LA leads, meets its target 10 years earlier than the others in 2035, and is also notable for not allowing biofuels, which the other scenarios allow as a transition fuel. Then we have transmission renaissance and high distributed energy future. They are both 100% renewable energy, no natural gas, no nuclear, and they differ on their assumptions about the feasibility of new transmission. Again, none of these scenarios are designed to be marching orders for LADWP. They are really designed to look at different bookends of what we can learn about the system and the trade-offs. Slide 7, please. Some updates to note over the course of the study. We have made some changes to the study since we first began, and I include 5 bullets under here. The first 2 reflect changes from the mayor's office. Early last year, when Mayor Garcetti announced that we would not be retiring the OTC units, we modified our study so that that is reflected in all scenarios. We have also integrated the electrification targets of the LA Green New Deal as part of our high load electrification scenarios. The next 3 bullets represent input from the advisory group. In response to the advisory group, we did our buildings modeling to assume hotter temperatures due to climate change. We evaluated qualitatively the impact of medium and heavy duty vehicles, and we included mortality as well as the monetization of health benefits and greenhouse gas benefits in the study. And of course, the other major update relates to COVID, but now that we're nearing the end of the study, the risks related to COVID have become smaller, and we've been successful in maintaining a robust advisory group throughout this last year. Slide 8, please. To date, we have held 14 of the 15 advisory group meetings. We'll have the final round of advisory group meetings this probably starting February. All our modeling is complete, so we're just wrapping up some analysis on some of our the components of the work. We have a website of results to date that we have shared with the advisory group, and we are drafting the final report. Next slide, please. Slide 9. Are you able to hit spacebar or make the video go on this? This is a video, if it works, oh great. I included this video to show you the richness of detail we have in the study. As I mentioned, we have bottom-up modeling of electricity demand in the future. And we have this demand for electricity mapped to every premise, every building in the city. And we have this by different end use types. So this particular visual is showing us electric vehicle charging over the course of a day. This is our moderate electrification scenario. And as it zooms in, the height of the bar indicates the total amount of charging over that day. So the bars that are really high represent like offices or multifamily buildings or shopping areas with electric vehicle charging. And as I mentioned, we have this for each type of load, so air conditioning, heating, and so forth. And we're able to map this to particular premises. We have information on electricity bill types for that type of premise, which we can then use to model what the adoption of customer rooftop solar might be to offset this type of energy usage. So it's a very data integrated approach to looking at how to get to 100% renewable energy. And this, of course, also feeds into our analysis of the distribution grid and how the distribution grid needs to adapt. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question,
sorry,
please?
Go ahead. Oh,
what does the visual representation give you? I imagine it can highlight some of the data or pockets of data, but what are you actually gleaning from the visual representation?
The visual representation can help us understand what's happening at a particular time or location on the grid, so we can unpack. So like if there's an extraordinary amount of energy at a particular location, we can look at, well, what exactly is contributing to that. It's another way of understanding the data.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Okay, this is a high-level overview of some of the results of the supply side part of the question of how do you get to 100% renewable energy? Just at the high level, we have found many different ways of getting to 100% renewable energy, and we are able to do this throughout the year. and under a variety of contingencies. And overall, we have found that the broader the number of solutions available to contribute to the 100% goal, the lower the cost. So this particular chart shows our high load scenarios. So this is the high growth in electrification, and comparing today on the left with the 4 scenarios in 2045 on the right. So this is what is the capacity in the ground to help meet that 100% target. And each color bar represents a different technology type. What we see common across all of these is wind, solar, and batteries. That is, no matter what we have changed on our assumptions about how to get there, we still build a lot of wind, solar, and batteries. What differs is how the system is managing the times of the year when the wind and solar is not available. It doesn't mean it's not available at all. There is always some wind and solar available, you know, at least through the batteries. But there are times of the year where we have a number of cloudy days in a row, and the batteries aren't able to recharge as well from solar and wind from outside the city. So here we're looking at different options of getting to that 100%, including with SB 100. As I mentioned, natural gas stays online because that target in particular is related to retail sales and not generation. And for the generation, and also to meet the target, you can offset that with renewable electricity credits, 10%. And then LA leads, here to meet these hard to meet times of the year, we build hydrogen combustion. And the other 2 scenarios rely more on what we call an agnostic renewable energy combustion turbine. So we assume biofuel is a market available transition fuel in the near term, but that by 2045, a hydrogen type of fuel would be available on the market for purchase and to be able to run in these combustion turbines as needed.
Okay, so just to be clear, I understand what you're saying. The light green is green hydrogen. The dark green is a blend of biofuels, but likely will it be green hydrogen, or are you agnostic? Are you not specifying the type of hydrogen?
Yeah, thank you. I was not clear. The light green assumes that we have all the infrastructure, assumes that the market is not available. So LA leads, because it achieves its target 10 years before the others, we made assumptions that there would not be a big market for hydrogen by 2035, and that in order to provide that fuel, LADWP would need to be able to produce the hydrogen fuel using electrolysis based on curtailed renewable energy, so this would be green, but that you would have the full sort of life cycle, control of the life cycle of that fuel. The other technologies don't build, except at ITP, don't build the electrolysis equipment and instead assume you can purchase the fuel that you need. This is, so in the near term, we assume that biofuel is available. In the long term, we think there will be other options. But we don't want to say that this is a biofuel pathway because that is not sustainable in the long term at a large scale. So it's, so we're just being agnostic.
Okay, and nor can you say if you're buying the hydrogen necessarily whether it's green hydrogen or not.
We know here we're assuming that you're buying green hydrogen.
You're only buying green hydrogen. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Let me go to the next slide, slide 11, because this slide will look at the generation. So that previous slide looks at capacity, so what gets built. So it looks like there's a lot of green in there from the previous slides because you're building a lot of capacity, but that capacity actually doesn't get run much. So here in this slide, we're looking at generation for the moderate scenarios. Starting with, on the left with 2020, and then 2035 and 2045. 2035, the percentages represent how much of the generation is renewable or carbon-free by 2035. So LA leads is 100% as designed by the scenario. The other 3 scenarios that aren't let me explain. IRP is the SLTRP 2017 recommended case, which we include in 2035 as to compare. The other scenarios, besides LEDs, are all at 90 or a little above 90% renewable energy by 2035. By 2045, that's when we have 3 of the scenarios fully 100% renewable energy all year. SB 100, again, this has some natural gas generation, that's 10%, which is offset by renewable electricity credits. What we see here, wind, solar, batteries, geothermal still make up a large part of the generation. And then meeting those harder times of the year, we're relying on the sort of peaker fuels to get there. Next slide, please. In terms of cost, this slide shows us cumulative annualized cost through 2045. So if we take the financial lifetime of each investment and spread it out over its lifetime, including financing costs, the total cost through 2045 for each scenario is represented in this chart. As you can see, there's a big difference in terms of for LEDs compared to the others. That is partly because this is achieving the target 10 years earlier. So of course, if you're achieving a target 10 years earlier, you're incurring costs of that change 10 years earlier and carrying those costs for an additional 10 years. Whereas some of the other scenarios are only making that sort of 90 to 100% transition in the last 5-10 years, and so you're not seeing the full lifetime of those costs. Another reason that LEDs is more expensive is that we have a higher cost assumed for having all the hydrogen infrastructure in-house compared to buying a market-based fuel for the combustion turbines. So that also contributes to the cost. Next slide, please. Slide 13. So for greenhouse gases, here LEDs, of course, is the one because it's transitioning faster. LEDs is reducing its combustion-related greenhouse gases quicker. That's the second column. Here we're looking at just combustion-related emissions across all scenarios. Greenhouse gases dropped because of the eliminating coal at IPP. And then the rest, the scenarios then show different degrees of reduction based on what's being generated through 2045. So by 2045, 3 of the scenarios, the right 3 scenarios are all at 0 combustion greenhouse gases, and SB 100 still has greenhouse gas emissions.
Why is there only one stress?
Oh, we're looking at the stress scenario just to imagine sort of a worst case of electricity growth. I don't think it's necessarily worth looking at all the 4 scenarios under that. It was really just to see how does it change if we didn't have some of the flexibility. Slide 14, please. And feel free to interrupt me anytime with questions. This slide shows life cycle greenhouse gas emissions. So life cycle greenhouse gas emissions looks at all components of greenhouse gas attributed to a technology, whether it's renewable energy, solar, wind, batteries. So from construction through end-of-life management of the technologies, each technology comes with greenhouse gases. So it allows us to compare the full life cycle, not just the combustion. Also on this chart, we're including the life cycle greenhouse gases associated with gasoline and natural gas and coal combustion. From the vehicles and building sector, it's just natural gas and gasoline that we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions. So what we see here is that the high load electrification scenarios, that's the middle row, has the greatest drop in life cycle greenhouse gas emissions because you're electrifying the vehicles and buildings. You get much faster drop in greenhouse gas when those sectors are included as well as the power sector. Next slide, please. I'm going to walk through some other components of the studies, some of which are wrapped up and done, some of which are sort of in the we're vetting it stage, so I don't have full results to share. And in all cases, I'm showing just a snapshot because we have so much content. So feel free to slow me down or speed me up as needed. But the next chart, slide 16, I will walk through the outline. Projections of customer solar and storage, locations for LADWP procured solar and storage, upgrades and associated costs with the distribution grid, workforce needs within and outside the city, net economic impacts within the city, air quality changes to ozone and PM 2.5 concentrations, health impacts, monetization of benefits, and environmental justice. And so I'll walk through each of these separately in separate slides. Slide 17, please. So starting with the first is the customer solar. We looked at starting with a technical potential. What's the potential for rooftop solar? Using GIS analysis, satellite imagery to look at orientation of roofs, shading, and so forth, to look at how much solar could customers build. And then from there, as I mentioned earlier, we match it to the electricity bill at that particular location. These are like actual buildings with representative customers. We're not getting specific customer data, but looking at how, if that household is likely to adopt electric vehicles or electric stoves and their electricity growth changes, how likely are they to adopt solar? We look at that. We have two projections, a high distributed generation projection and a moderate distributed generation projection, and these vary based on how the customers might be compensated. So the high growth assumes that net metering continues indefinitely, and the moderate growth assumes that there is that the compensation is much less during the middle of the day when LADWP doesn't need that solar. No matter which compensation we chose, they both grew significantly over time from 2.5 to 4 gigawatts of customer solar growth in the city. And so each of our scenarios is attached to one of these 5 projections. And the map on the right shows us where that growth occurs. Next slide, please. We might also want solar in the city that is not attached to a customer, but that LADWP wants to procure, whether it's through a feed-in tariff or through its own assets or some other way. Here we're using GIS analysis to look at ground mount, parking canopy, and floating solar options. So we rank the locations within the city of where this could be. This could be for a virtual net metering program. This could be for community solar of any kind. It could be for the city. But where are the locations? And so, for example, here, this is LADWP-owned property, and so that would rank higher than a private property. The map on the right shows us where we actually deploy these locations in the city. This is a different perspective. This is just the space that you need. It's a little bit of a different map than the previous one.
Is it fair to say that this is probably a generous assessment because, practically speaking, LADWP can't, cover their entire whatever that polygon is on the left with solar panels, even if it has this? Okay.
Yeah, and we don't actually build up. It's a small percent of the available land that looks suitable for solar. It's a small percent that we actually build anything on. Next slide, please. So this slide looks at the distribution costs associated with changes. This in particular a lot of the 4.8 kV, I mean, it's looking at both the 34.5 kV system and the 4.8 kV system. But most of the load changes occur on the lower voltage system. And so we have a lot, we look at, you know, what are the violation types? How do we mitigate the violations with new equipment or changing of settings, new lines, new transformers? And then we calculate the cost. And we've done this for each of our scenarios. And so I'd say the takeaway here is that there are no showstoppers on the distribution grid. You know, there was nothing, you know, in terms of the electrification targets or the customer solar that gets added to the city. There was nothing that was going to, you know, break the bank on upgrade costs. And that all of the costs are a pretty small fraction of compared to the overall bulk power cost of getting to 100% renewable energy. Next slide, please. Here, we also, as I mentioned, look at workforce needs that are associated with the scenarios. This is a type of analysis that we're still vetting, so I'm not going to give you broad takeaways, but the kinds of information we provide are illustrated in this graphic, where we're looking at annual jobs, and in this case, jobs that are located in the city related to construction, and we've colored them by which type of technology, you know, which type of unit we're building. We provide this kind of information for both annual construction and operating and maintenance jobs, and average earnings per worker associated with this. And so we can look across the scenarios and see how the workforce needs differ by the scenarios, and also how they differ in terms of workforce within the city compared to workforce needed outside the city. Slide 21, please. We evaluate net economic impacts. Economic impacts can be both positive and negative, and we're looking. So we're looking at the change in net employment and income associated with the LA 100 scenarios. So just relatively speaking, how do the scenarios differ along those metrics, and along with who is most affected. And so results, we can share that next time we have a briefing. Slide 22. With air quality, as I mentioned, we're looking at changes in concentrations of ozone and PM 2.5. To get there, we first started with an emissions inventory. So related to the study, what are the emissions associated with the different scenarios? And here we can see that most of the emissions are associated with the transportation sector. Today, that small red bar represents, or from 2012, represents NOx and particulate matter emissions associated with the power sector. And in the future, they are, you know, that you can barely see them because these combustion turbines aren't operated very much. So once we have the emissions from these particular sectors, we then use air quality modeling to look at changes in concentration of ozone and PM 2.5. And I'll be able to present those results more fully next time. Slide 23, please. With those changes in those pollutants, we can then look at the health impacts. And here we're looking at mortality, ozone and PM 2.5 related, as well as morbidity. So changes in emergency department visits for asthma and cardiovascular disease. So we have quantified, based on the changes in concentration in the atmosphere, we can look at how the scenarios relate in terms of health impacts. Next slide, please, 24. With those health impacts, we then monetize the value of those avoided emergency visits as well as the avoided deaths. And so we can, so for example, we can isolate the different impacts. We can isolate the impacts of changes in the power sector, and we can isolate the impacts of changes in the building and vehicle electrification, and then we can look across the change of both at once. And this map in particular is looking at the value in terms of avoided health costs related to building and vehicle electrification. And we can look at where these benefits are likely to occur. Next slide, please, slide 25. And then finally, environmental justice. This is, we're still working on this analysis, but this effort includes a number of factors. One is a goal to facilitate participation in discussions about the study and results. So we want to make sure that we're providing information in a way that folks can share and participate and provide value to their participation in what their future might look like in terms of the power system. We are also conducting community outreach, as Reiko mentioned, starting next week. And then we are conducting analysis in terms of the results, in terms of using Cal EnviroScreen to understand the health benefits, as well as energy infrastructure. So for example, I mentioned customer solar adoption. We can look at how that adoption differs between advantaged and disadvantaged communities relative to their respective technical potential, and if in absence of a policy that would expedite adoption in disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. In terms of our timelines for outreach, we are starting community outreach on these dates that are listed in the green box. This is what we're calling round one. Round one is to introduce the study, explain the scenarios, and explain sort of at a high level what the implications of the scenarios mean. And then round two will be in March, and those will be when we go into the results in much more detail. And so with the round one, we're planning on meetings in January on different days from morning, afternoon, evening, and weekend, and to neighborhood councils. And then the other aspect related to outreach is our report and website, which will be made available in March. Next slide, please, 27. This is a screenshot of our website. Right now, it's password protected. We have shared this with the advisory group. This is where we're putting some of our results as we get them to try to make it available for the advisory group to be able to dig into more details than time allows during our meetings. Also, we want feedback from our advisory group on how we can improve this to support community outreach. We also have some videos, which I provided links for at the bottom, and I'm happy to share the website password information with the board if you're interested in going through the website. But we will be updating this again more thoroughly by March in advance of the study release. Next slide, please, 28.
Will there be another touch point before that release with any updates to us, or I don't know what the plan is in terms of anything else you glean?
I would be happy to come back with just the focus on the synthesis of what we learned.
I will definitely put that on the agenda, Nicole.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
So are there any questions from board members at this point?
Hello, this is Commissioner LEHRER. It's really interesting. It's fantastic that this work is being done. I don't know about my other fellow commissioners. Since I've only been a commissioner for a few months, I had no idea this was an ongoing sort of study, which is only a little bad, and then I fancy myself as really trying to keep up to date. And this is, I like the fact very much that this is and the way you're presenting trade-offs and different scenarios. I do have a few questions, and I'll try to go into the website and find some of them. Who's been participating in terms of some of the environmental groups, and this is a lot of information to grasp. And for some of the people that are, starting to get engaged in some of especially air and water quality issues, that are younger and are trying to get themselves informed. I went to a fine institution and I studied a related profession, and honestly, I feel like I need a deep dive course to understand what you're saying half the time. So with that, I just say, I'm just asking not only for another presentation to this board to find out how do, in my case, my children who are in their 30s and professionals who are wanting to stay involved and understand these kinds of issues better, where do they go and how do they understand some of the information, a lot of the technical information. But in one last little detail, the cover of your book shows a building, and I'm just wondering if that's a model of a building that does all the air quality and that attends to all the air quality and basically issues of renewable energy and such, because I think it tells a big story, what you put on your cover. And
okay.
Okay.
Good point. In terms of engagement, we are trying to design the website for different types of users, so that we have some explanatory videos that, to help explain different concepts that are important to understand and understanding the trade-offs. And we also have a very rich set of data layers that you can interact with and play around the data and hopefully eventually download it. So we're trying to get feedback now from our advisory group on how to make improvements, but it's most of the effort will come when we publish the study. And I'm happy at that point to do community outreach to help walk through things.
And also, if you want to, if people need to be flexible, like I'm going to want the tape of what you presented today so I can focus, but some YouTube little, videos and explanations. A lot of people are listening to books and, other sort of teachings, on while they're on their headsets, while they're walking around and doing what we do a lot these days. So thank you very much for the work. And since I come from the design field, the graphics are great. And now I just need to make sure that I understand them.
I'm happy to walk through anything with you. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Reyes.
Just really want to express my appreciation for the report, showing us a deeper dive of the broader set pathways that could be pursued to achieve 100% renewable power system. And of course, we're going to be mindful that all of those pathways will impact our investments, where we invest and what the operational costs will be, what the emissions and air quality impacts will be, the jobs and economic development, and the electricity rates in various ways. So I think we are, this is a great report in terms of carving those pathways for the long term. But of course, we can see as well with the graphs that we're going to be, grappling with some challenges, with some mismatches probably of renewable supply and demand. But it's a great, compilation of the scenarios. Thank you for the detailed, and also, behind in the back of my mind, I'm already looking at some possible solutions for that, which is great because it's really, sort of like inspires and incentivizes our folks, hopefully our staff, to really work on the long-term set of pathways and understand the trade-offs, between cost, enviro, impacts, economic, and equity outcomes. Having said that, I also want to emphasize, because I know that the EJ part is not yet fully vetted. I think in the motion, the original motion, specifically states that there will be focus on, especially on EJ neighborhoods, right, as the first immediate beneficiaries of anything that's, on localized air quality and GHG reduction. So having and bearing that in mind, that is very important because our constituents need to be fully informed and that information needs to bridge the gap of what the research and their concerns are. My main question is there a process where there is a reliability check as part of all of these scenarios that you've presented, Jacqueline?
Yes, yes, we have looked at a few different techniques. We've looked at, let's say, many different techniques to look at the reliability question. One, we have a few different models that look at, are we able to meet electricity demand at all times, including we've looked at multiple weather years and when we have outages on the system, whether it's generators or transmission. We have also looked at used like full year simulations of the power system to look at what happens if we lose major transmission lines. So here the concern is, can we still operate reliably if we have so much wind and solar that's located out of the city? And we've also looked at used power flow tools to look at the transmission system in more detail.
Okay, thank you for that information. And then the last question is, I know we put a pause on the strategic long-term SLRP, as I call it, as a basis to evaluate this. When do we see it? And maybe one of our staff, maybe Reiko can answer this. When do we see that being used? Is it after we have this report that the SLRP can, that this report will inform us on the strategic long-term renewable program or report that we're supposed to be coming up with?
Commissioner, once this LA100 program, our study is done, as well as the Clean Grid LA, those two will merge back into the SLRP, or Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan, as we call it, and be incorporated into the future power plan. It becomes our playbook on how we transition our system.
All right, thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, do you have any additional questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And is Commissioner BARAD be able to be on the call?
Yes, Commissioner BARAD's on the call.
Commissioner BARAD, did you have questions? Hearing none, I have a few, and again, I know that that we are a little pressed for time today, so I will try to make this brief. A couple of things. The study, and I concur and want to add my voice to those who are acknowledging the significance of this work, and both want to congratulate NAREL and also, or NREL, and also want to acknowledge the work of our staff in supporting this study and my appreciation for all of the stakeholders involved thus far. I too want to indicate some concern about the environmental, the EJ outreach that is yet to come. I am always, a bit disappointed when it comes kind of at the end as sort of an afterthought. And I do believe that it will be critically important that in order for it to be as robust and as meaningful as I know the EJ community would like to see it be, that some real quality time be put into the tools and the manner of that outreach so that it's not, doesn't really come off as a check the box engagement, but it's something that does educate, engage, and solicit the input and opinions of folks in EJ communities. With respect to the presentation today, I just have a couple of questions about a couple of the future technologies, both biofuels and hydrogen technology. I'm curious about, for biofuels, for instance, would biofuels or the use of biofuels require new infrastructure, or is it contemplated that this would be transported through existing natural gas pipelines?
Would you mind if I respond to the EJ comment first?
Sure.
So we have already been engaging with EJ communities. We're not waiting for the end of the study. And some of the comments that came out earlier were really the importance of facilitating participation. And so as NREL, we are not recommending policies and so forth. And so originally I saw our role as, okay, we're providing information, but all the facilitating of engagement is on LADWP. But hearing that come up from so many different EJ communities made me appreciate the value that we have in participating earlier in trying to think of how we can make this material accessible to the public, how we can make it more applicable to the questions that they have, and trying to give different points in the study so that we can hear more of the voices of their vision for the future power system, so that we can better, once we're hearing these different voices, and we've already had some of these conversations, that we then want to be able to take what we have learned and help kind of package it in a way that is more appropriate, not appropriate, but more applicable. So it's not that we're waiting for the last bit. Some of the analysis waits for the end because we had to wait for the air quality, which in turn had to wait for the bulk power system. So some of that analysis did have to wait, but the engagement has happened earlier. Obviously, there's always more we could have done on engagement, but that part hasn't waited. So I just wanted to state that. And we've had good support from DWP on that. And then on your biofuel question, yes. So in terms of new infrastructure, it depends on how much we would be burning. The easiest lift is more like the renewable electricity credit approach, where you purchase biomethane that gets injected somewhere in the natural gas transmission network. And that, each molecule doesn't necessarily get to you, but you've purchased it and it's part of it. So that's one approach. Otherwise, this could be part of rail or road transport if it's liquid biofuel.
Okay, so, and then the same for hydrogen. I'm just curious about the infrastructure associated with that. And also, I know it's a constant topic of conversation. So I'm curious as to, and I think we had this discussion privately, I'd just like to have the question answered on the record as it relates to the current availability of that technology at the scale that DWP would require. Is that currently in existence or demonstrated any place that we could look at?
Yes, it's not at the scale that DWP would require. The major manufacturers have all committed to different hydrogen-related generation at different time scales. So this is something I don't see as a showstopper. You know, whether it's hydrogen or something else in the future, that is hard for us to tell now. But I don't imagine that it would be. It's burning a fuel that's not a novel. You know, it's just adapting these technologies to burn hydrogen instead of natural gas. It's not a fundamentally different approach to generation. So in terms of the hydrogen infrastructure, that is certainly it does carry a lot of decisions that would need to be made in terms of if we have to build the electrolysis equipment and store the fuel on site. We need to think about how you would store it, how we would size the electrolyzers. If we can purchase this from a market, then we can't use natural gas pipelines for hydrogen. That would require something different. So these are certainly big questions. I would say kind of one of the takeaways from the study is that we see the need to have something that we have available to run for several days in a row when things go wrong. Right now, hydrogen, might be it, might be that type of source. It could be something else. The point is that we want to build, if we want to start today planning for replacing the natural gas and don't want to have, want to minimize the uncertainty associated with that, we should be thinking, some of what comes out of the study is showing the value of having something that you have available but you don't run. So we don't want to run these plants, but we want them available when things go wrong. And so sort of thinking about it that way is sort of how we've seen the results of the study.
Okay, and then just a couple more questions, and I will actually just one more, and then I'll have a quick question for Fred. Did the study consider any technologies such as either carbon capture and sequestration or direct air capture during the 25-year horizon for the study?
Yeah, that was not available in our study. For all the studies, we phased out the fossil fuels except for the SB100 case.
Okay. Then finally, the study for this incredibly comprehensive and significant cost, across the various scenarios have been identified, which is great. When will we have rate impacts for each scenario? Or is that something that's contemplated either, Jacqueline, by your team or Fred? Is that something that you could weigh in on?
We have cost information. The rate analysis will be done by LADWP, and we are working with them to try to get them that information as fast as possible.
Do we have then anybody on the LADWP side, any estimation as to when we would have information regarding rate impact?
Commissioner, this is Ann Santilli. We are working with NREL where we need the data from them, and then we will run it through our financial model so that we can see what is the change in the cents per kilowatt hour based on the different scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pickle, did you have a comment with respect to this item? You're on mute or otherwise not plugged in, can't hear you.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I was. The first is to compliment them on leading edge work. I've been doing work in large scale energy modeling and impacts for 45 years. And this is a major step forward in the amount of detail considered, in the power system modeling and also in the integration of the environmental impacts and the representation of economic and environmental justice impacts. So that's a great step. One of the challenges of this is capturing everything, and some of the things that are harder to capture but they've included in a basic way are the speed of technological advance of the of the major technologies and of building and automotive technologies in the carbon area. And really the big trade-off we're making here is how fast do we invest in technologies that are improving rapidly, and how soon do we invest? Staring at slides 12 and 14, at both the generation and the cost impacts really kind of illustrate that, is how fast do we want to move. For example, 12 is my favorite because I'm supposed to worry about cost, and this ultimately drives the rates. The challenge with going to 100% by 2035 is it costs a lot, and those costs hang around for a long time. We've recently been through another example like this where large-scale solar that was purchased in the mid-aughts was running over 20 cents a kilowatt hour, and now we can buy that for about 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you buy early, you'll pay, and you pay for a long time, because these projects are financed or purchased on a 20 to 30-year period. The second thing is slide 14. This shows that no matter what we're doing, there's been substantial reduction in DWP's carbon impact over this period, and the question is, could you get more bang for the buck by focusing more on vehicles and buildings in this process? And those are major discussions we will have to have going forward and in more detail. This project is really an amazingly comprehensive project, amazingly thorough. I have to compliment the NREL people. There's one thing that's in the online downloadable version of this presentation that we didn't discuss, and that was looking at sensitivity studies on major things in the project. It's useful to look at that later, and I love doing sensitivity studies. You understand much better what's going on. You should not look at these studies as something that's going to happen. You have to look at it as things we need to watch as we move forward. We will need to change direction. Every forecast is wrong, especially 25-year forecasts. So we will need to modify what we do over time. But I want to thank Jacqueline's team for their very thorough project.
Thanks. Well, okay. Thank you. If there are no further comments, very much appreciate this presentation. Look forward to having you back. In the meantime, any commissioner that is interested in a more in-depth briefing at some point in the future, Jacqueline's been incredibly accommodating. Reach out to Reka's team, and they can put something together. So, and I also encourage you to take advantage of the link to the password protected website. And Susie, if you would just make sure that everybody has access to that link, that would be great. So I'd like to, at this point, take an item out of order, if that's okay. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, are you still with us?
I am indeed.
Perfect. Then I know that you had a hard out, and I did want to make sure that we were able to present item 14 before we got to that hour. So if we could have item 14, that would be great. And would you like a presentation, or did you have questions?
It was just an interest in getting a better an additional overview with the presentation.
Then if, Marty, if we could have the presentation of that item, it would be terrific.
First, for this item, we will have Jason Rondu, our Director of Clean Grid LA, as well as David Castro, who supervises the Distributed Energy Resources Development Group, available for a presentation.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Jason Rondu, Director of Clean Grid LA Division. As Reiko mentioned earlier today, while we're investing significant time and energy in LA 100 and Clean Grid LA planning efforts, we really don't have the luxury to wait and pause all of our modernization efforts for our grid. And the FIT Plus and virtual net energy metering are great examples of that. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce David Castro, who will give a brief presentation on this new pilot program that we're very excited to see. So David Castro, would you please introduce yourself and get us rolling?
Thank you, Jason, executive staff, and our esteemed commissioners for this opportunity. My name is David Castro. I am the supervisor of our DER program development group in Clean Grid LA, and want to just go ahead and dive into the background and components of our FIT Plus pilot program. Slide. So we'll be going over, I think it's important to always maintain the perspective of, what were the drivers cause this innovation, where are we at today, and where do we see FIT Plus continuing to innovate and grow in future expansions. Next slide. For us, we're at the cusp of this clean energy transition, and it is paramount to the success of our group, our division, our organization, to always be forward-thinking in trying to identify new strategic innovations to implement within our core business as well as our service territory. And so the FIT Plus program really establishes a framework that hits a lot of our core strategic objectives in terms of, how do we get better at procuring DERs? And so we're really been working in parallel with several efforts, including the presentation that was just given regarding LA 100. And so everything that we've designed into the program is cutting edge in terms of how we've traditionally handled programs in the past. And so that sort of a boiling point of innovation has been a core foundation for what our staff has undertaken within the last several years. Next slide. So at its core, the FIT Plus pilot program will be repurposing 10 megawatts from our FIT expansion program. And so we want to have a isolated pilot to really be able to get an understanding of the effectiveness and capabilities of several new features that we are adding into the realm of feed-in tariff. And so it's important to note that this FIT Plus pilot program establishes one of the nation's first feed-in tariff programs that incorporates energy storage into this business model. We are focusing development within 3 preferred zones of East Valley, South LA, and West LA. And it's critical to note that we are providing priority enrollment to East Valley and South LA, both of which are communities that are designated as a disadvantaged community per the Calum Virus Screen score. So equity has been built in to this program, and we are trying to drive adoption and development within these communities. Another big innovation in comparison to our traditional solar-only FIT program is that we are very much pivoting to the concept of competitive bidding. I know at the end of 2019, when the board approved the FIT expansion program, it was at recommendation of the OPA to evaluate, how we could, incorporate competitive aspects into future iterations of a feed-in tariff style program. And through the diligence of staff, as well as working with internal and external stakeholders, we've been able to establish a system that I believe will benefit the long-term performance of the program, as well as our ratepayers as a whole. Next slide.
You talk about the competitive process. It looks like it's windows of bidding, but I'm just not clear on how many windows and just how you're going to go about it.
Question. Thank you. So right now, what we have is 3 primary tranches of bidding windows to facilitate incoming bids. And so we'll be able to throttle based off of the performance of an individual tranche to be able to move to subsequent tranches. So at its core, bidders will submit a base price of energy, and we'll look at the total levelized cost of a proposed project and be able to rank and select projects that offer the least cost best fit value for the department. And we also touch on some of those items in subsequent slides. Okay, moving on. So 2 brand new features that we've really listened to our broader industry to see, what growing trends are present and how can we really, from a business perspective, try and accelerate development and bridge the necessary gaps that we have with several of our industry partners. And so a growing topic that has been present within the DER market as a whole has been this concept of value stacking. And so for us, 2 brand new features that we're incorporating into the Feed-in Tariff Plus pilot program are 2 brand new capabilities. One is the concept of resiliency. In the event of a potential grid outage, these solar and energy storage systems will be able to work to provide on-site backup for customers that are hosting these assets. And then as well as the incorporation of peak shaving in order to help leverage incentives that are provided by the CPUC established SGIP program, which is administered by SoCalGas. And so our thought here is that we really want to have the pathway for customers, developers to be able to optimize and maximize these assets and to drive adoption within our service territory. And so we believe these 2 new features are innovative, although strategic, to help guide that effort. Next slide. Again, just to highlight, our 3 preferred zones are going to be East Valley, South LA, and West LA. And then again, to confirm that, these communities will be provided priority enrollment, East Valley and South LA, to drive adoption within these disadvantaged communities. Next slide. Just to highlight the competitive bidding process, I think I want to highlight 2 specific items. One, we will be finding the least cost best fit proposals that are bid into any specific tranche, and with the important note that LADWP at its discretion will be able to accept and reject proposals at its own discretion. So if a tranche, if the econometrics of a certain tranche are not quite there yet, we can forego that and move forward with a rebidding in a subsequent tranche. And then the second is a new additional feature of the concept of reimbursing actual interconnection costs within this pilot program, and I will speak to that on the following slide. I apologize. In terms of proposal content, the things that we will be evaluating are going to be the specific zone, the submitted base price of energy, as well as the energy profile at how these assets will be performing. And so we will be taking a detailed look into the energy production profile that is intended. And again, our pursuit is to try and find the least cost, best fit projects for the department. Slide. So the concept of interconnection cost reimbursement was something that our team had a significant amount of deliberation on internally. Essentially, what we are aiming to achieve is twofold. One, and this has been from consistent feedback from our business community, has been one, there is a certain degree of variance when it comes to interconnection costs for certain projects. And so we want to try and eliminate that uncertainty and variance by establishing a mechanism that would be able to reimburse actual incurred costs. And we establish a ceiling of $150,000 per project. Reducing that variance and uncertainty will result in more competitive bids coming in to essentially lower the per unit price of a certain project. And lastly, we want to find ways to ultimately benefit ratepayers. At the end of the day, DWP has a lower borrowing rate in comparison to other entities that do not have the financial capabilities that we do. And so in combination of leveraging that lower cost of borrowing, reducing uncertainty, we feel that this appropriately reduces barriers for market entry for new developers wishing to develop within our service territory, and it sends the appropriate signal out to the market that we value and need DERs, and we're willing to work together to find projects that can benefit all parties, and most importantly, our ratepayers. Next slide.
To be clear on this one, is this effectively then just a credit on their bill for whatever the interconnection costs we've incurred are?
We will be providing that bill back to the developer on the first payment that would be due. And so really for these next steps, we will be going to City Council, assuming board approval. And I think, really in the spirit of having a pilot, there's several new innovations and features that we're including within this new iteration. And we want to have the appropriate risk appetite to say, this is something brand new. Let's monitor and track the progress and see how it performs. And then as we establish that framework and gain and garner these lessons learned, refine and improve for future program iterations. And that's really the intent that we have today. Next slide. Before we jump into Q&A, just want to take this opportunity to thank several staff, both internally and externally, that have helped that have helped us endeavor to get to this point and juncture. And so just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has helped this endeavor. And with that, open it up for feedback, comments, or questions, and thank you for your time.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You hit a bunch of my questions. The only ones outstanding just relate to the pilot nature of this program and what the target size ultimately would be of the program. When do you hope to get there? And per Dr. Pickle's suggestion, I think it would be good to get an update on the status of the program or lessons learned and how you fared. I don't know if a year is the appropriate time because I'm trying to think about how quickly you can go through a solicitation process, awarding the contract and things getting online. But, let's say a year and you come back and indicate if that's not the right, once you get closer to that year, you indicate if that's not the right timing. But going back to the point of the question is just where are you headed in terms of the size and when do you think you'll get there?
Great question. Thank you. I think right now we're at the juncture of oftentimes the hardest part about developing pilots is getting it off the ground initially, and that's really where we're at this stage of our development. We really want to be able to evaluate the effectiveness of this program as it merges into the broader portfolio of our generation resources. And I think we would need to be prudent in our evaluation to then have a clear indication of how big we really envision this. And so I think to that point, I would simply defer to future evaluation, and we fully accept Dr. Pickle's recommendation in terms of reporting, and look forward to additional feedback and guidance at the request of the board.
And David, if I could also add, in our sort of forecast of feed-in tariff, we had estimated that we had the capacity to adopt about 50 megawatts per year, and that was something that we spelled out in our latest expansion. It's difficult to forecast because it's market-driven. It's particularly difficult to forecast because the previous feed-in tariff approvals have all been set price, and if you overshoot or undershoot, you have to adjust. In this case, we do think that because it's more competitively bid, that we'll have quicker market discovery, we'll have the ability to hopefully get projects proposed sooner. I would just caveat that because there's new interconnection standards, because it's a totally new business model, that it may take time for this to develop. But as David said, launching is the biggest challenge with a lot of the distributed resource programs. Once they're launched, scaling is often a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Go ahead.
This is Fred Pickle. I think Commissioner Neiman Brady suggested a good idea. On the virtual net energy metering, we suggest two reports, one year out and one 2 years out after first commercial operation. I suggest we do the same thing here. That is, have a report 1 year after first commercial operation and one 2 years after first commercial operation, because that would be better reflect what learning is going on in terms of how we're doing on this.
I would concur with that recommendation and would ask that it be accepted as part of the motion adopting, that we adopt that to the extent that this motion is adopted, that it includes a report back to the board in 12 months and subsequent report in 24.
So, Commissioner, it would be the first item would be a motion to amend the resolution to include those recommendations.
Okay.
Yes.
Then I'd make a motion to amend the resolution to include a report back to this commission, to report back to the commission, one in 12 months and one in 24 months. Is there a second for that motion? Susie, would you call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Neiman Brady. Commissioner Reyes.
Yes.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Yes.
Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
And Commissioner
Next item
Neiman
then
Brady.
would be.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Neiman Brady, I didn't hear you.
Commissioner Neiman Brady voted yes.
Okay. Aye. 4 ayes.
The next item then would be a
motion
to adopt the resolution as amended.
Yes, I move that the resolution be adopted as amended.
I second.
Susie, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Neiman Brady.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER. Commissioner Reyes.
Yes.
Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL.
Yes.
Commissioner LEHRER. And Commissioner Jill Berard.
Yes for LEHRER.
Yes for LEHRER. 4 ayes.
Okay, thank you. And I think with that, we will go back to, we'll move back up the agenda. The wildfire mitigation plan update. Reiko, can you tell me how long you anticipate that particular update?
And Brian here, can you provide an estimate?
5 minutes. A maximum of 7
10 minutes?
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
I'm tempted to have Brian to do it in 2 weeks, just so Brian has to show up in a jacket again.
Training him.
I saw him at the board meeting. I was just stunned and excited. I even sent him a note in chat. I don't think he saw it. But anyway, in any event, I'm wasting time. Gentlemen, will you please start?
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Simon Zodu. I'm the Director for Regulatory Compliance and Specifications. This presentation is to provide the board with a brief update of DWP's wildfire mitigation plan and strategies and programs for calendar year 2020. Next slide, please. The topic of wildfire has continued to gain a lot of attention in California. The wildfire season throughout the West, including California, has increased to an average of about 8 to 9 months per year, which has become the new normal. And more importantly, I think the intensity, frequency, and severity of the wildfires have impacted our citizens as well as local economies. And as shown on this chart, which is prepared by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, also known as CAL FIRE, in 2020, the number of incidents, damaged structures, and the total area impacted by wildfire has increased a lot. And this increase has primarily been attributed to climate change, increase in temperatures, reduced snowpack, and increase in the amount of deadwood and fuel that's available out there. Next slide, please. So California has taken several steps to systematically address the impacts of these hazards. One example is Assembly Bill 1054, which in July 2019 established the California Wildfire Safety Advisory Board. The California Wildfire Advisory Board is not a regulatory body. It provides review of the wildfire mitigation plans and to California utilities and provide recommendations as well. So publicly owned utilities such as LADWP are required to submit their respective wildfire mitigation plans to the advisory board on July 1st of every year and wait to receive comments and advisory opinion from the board. As shown on the table, LADWP submitted its wildfire mitigation plan to the advisory board back in June 2020 and was invited to make presentations at the advisory board's meeting at least twice within 2020. Next slide, please. So the initial response from the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board has been very favorable and positive to LADWP's wildfire mitigation plan. Especially, they were very appreciative of the identification of risks that we listed, as well as the descriptions we provided for grid hardening metrics. Next slide, please. So just last month, the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board issued its formal recommendations to all California public-owned utilities. Some of the highlights are listed here. One areas to highlight would be they wanted us to manage, especially public-owned utilities, to manage the impact of public safety power shutoffs by neighboring investor-owned utilities, improvement in inspections and inspection of infrastructures, as well as improvements in situational awareness technology and data sharing. Next slide, please. The good news is that many of the recommendations that they provided us are already implemented by LADWP. We are in the process of evaluating the remaining recommendations for feasibility and applicability for future implementation. The map you see here is the maps used for the development of our wildfire mitigation plan. It shows both our service territories and within the city of Los Angeles in Owens Valley. And it shows all the Tier 3 shown in red, Tier 2 shown in orange color,
and the high fire risk zones designated by the LA Fire Department. Next slide, please. Collaboration is a big part of the wildfire mitigation plan. We recognize that it takes a collaborative effort to prevent wildfires, and we still take it very seriously. We have a long-standing and a working relationship and communication protocols with the LA Fire Department, the County Fire Department, CAL FIRE, and at the same time, we do have active mutual assistance agreements with other utilities, including the California Utilities Emergency Association. All these are geared towards reducing wildfire risk and the impacts of wildfires. So now I would like to turn it over to Brian Wilbur for updates related to our various strategies and programs.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know last year we came in and we discussed the specific aspects of the wildfire plan, and it was more, what we're putting together and what we're going to do. So this year it's a little bit different. It's how much of that stuff have we actually done, and what changes that we've implemented and what we're going to do moving forward. So still the best, most efficient, rubber meets the road approach is really to build our infrastructure in a manner that's going to prevent wires coming down and starting wildfires. And that's our approach. And it's a four-headed approach, specifically on designing construction standards, changing those, improving our vegetation and management programs, a more inclusive inspection and maintenance program, and an updated operation and protocols that we're implementing. So, next slide. Specific to change in our construction and standards, and this is the heart of our PSRP program, our power system reliability program, and that's updating everything that we have. And that's including alternative poles, steel, ductile iron, fiberglass poles, reviewing our wind loading programs for increasing our anchoring, increasing the wind loading capabilities of our poles, specifically as it relates to high fire threat areas. That's that increase from 55 mile an hour loading programs to an 85 mile an hour loading program. It's installing fiberglass arm, increased conductor spacing, steel stranded conductors, insulated wire. Next slide. So like Simon alluded to, the high fire threat district is really a small area of our service territory. And our PSRP, our reliability program, is not exclusive to the high fire threat areas. It is for our entire system. It's for maintaining reliability in our entire system. But some of the increased inspections that we've had specifically to high fire threat zones has really helped us to identify the need in those areas and what we can go ahead and move forward with replacing, especially when it comes to poles, cross arms, and conductor that's being installed. One of the issues that we had specifically with replacing conductors this year is every other utility in the state is looking at covered wire and tree wire and installing that, and procurement's been a problem. But since then, since we started implementing this and buying these, we have over 185,000 feet of covered conductors to be installed specifically in these areas. So we do have a wire on hand now that we can start updating. So I expect to see this increase quite a bit in our conductor replaced for next year. Next slide, please. Specifically, the two items that fall into play here when we talk about wildfire mitigation is our vegetation management program and our inspection and maintenance program. Both of these have new contracts that are being implemented this year. They are much more robust. There's more data analytics that are coming in, more detailed, better record keeping that is tied in with these contracts that we're bringing up. This is going to help us focus our resources more appropriately. We look at more than 350,000 trees a year that go through inspection and through trimming. This new contract will help us get a more accurate database along with our inspection and maintenance program. It's much more inclusive than what we've had in the past. So it's not just the raw data that we're getting, but it's the data analytics that goes along with that are tied in with these programs moving forward. Next slide. For operations and protocols, This is something last year we talked about what we were doing distribution-wise, how our crews were going to respond during high fire red flag days, the work that we were going to do. Now we've kind of focused into some of change in our protocols. More importantly, our information or our instructions for load dispatchers, what we're going to do in a red fire threat, how we're going to change the way we set our relays, and the specific protocols that will go forward when those events happen. Next slide. I chose this particular red flag warning day that happened from October 26th to October 28th because during the fire season this year, this was one that lasted 3 days. And this was a great example of how we put our protocols in place, how the changes that we've implemented, and how we've implemented our wildfire plan to be effective during this. Right? We had a 3-day period where we had red flag days. And, once that red flag alert comes through, once we get that notification from the fire department, we really kind of followed this one along where our load dispatchers implemented their new load dispatcher instructions, electronically blocking all of our automated reclosures, notifying our system operations group to manually block reclosures and stations that are not automated, and our transmission and distribution field workers suspending their scheduled work, increasing our patrol crews, using our new ground searching procedures for when we do have an issue, making sure that we can sectionalize and not re-energize until we can fully patrol the circuits. So there was a lot of success that went in these 3 days when we looked at our program and how it was implemented. That's not to say that there wasn't challenges. We were able to identify some problems that we need to go and look at moving forward. Part of that's more sectionalizing of those high fire threat areas so we can get more people back on faster and really just sectionalize the problem areas that we have. So we were able to identify a few challenges through that period also. All right. Next slide, please. So moving forward, and Simon kind of alluded to this, evaluating and implementing our recommendations from the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board, submitting our new plan in July, but improving our situational awareness. And what I mean by that is what are we doing moving forward? What else are we looking at as new technologies come into play? So specifically, we've teamed up with the LAFD and the Alert Wildfire Group for accessing and more cameras and installing more cameras in our service territory. We have plans moving forward at multiple locations to install cameras in Topanga State Park and some of our more rough terrain areas so we can monitor things more closely. We also have 40 AnyCom cameras that we've put up ourselves, that we have our own closed circuit that we monitor. Many of these are in the high fire threat district areas. We have 4 going in that are solar power that we can put on our transmission lines where we don't have conventional power to keep these cameras going. So moving forward, we have a lot of camera work that's going in. Also, we have a satellite vegetation surveillance system that's coming in. This is kind of like a LiDAR system, but it's satellite-based, and it's going to be able to monitor our vegetation growth. So that's another pilot that we have going in also. Drone technology is a huge step forward. What we're looking at, we have a few programs in place to help monitor and do inspections with drones. We're also looking at our Rapid Earth technology, and this is advanced settings on relays and waveforms that we can monitor our system where we can shut off of our relays more abruptly, faster than we can currently. So these new technologies we're constantly looking at, and the biggest piece that's going to help us is distribution automation. Jeff Groups is working on the communication system being put in. Once we can get more line monitors on top of our lines and we can get that communication and those data analytics, it's going to help to move this program forward quite rapidly. Next slide. So essentially, I know I didn't go into a lot of detail here. This is more of an update of where we've been and where we're going, but it gives us the opportunity to show where we're refocusing our efforts based on the recommendations and the collaboration between the other POUs. We still continue to update this program, our continuing effort to reduce wildfires, maintaining our dedication to environmental stewardship, and moving forward in this endeavor. All right, I welcome any questions.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, thank you for that. I appreciate it. We have files items.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. It's incredibly good work. I really, really appreciate it. I think a lot of people that live with a major fear of fire could stand a little article or a little news brief on what you're up to. I will say that. I live near Griffith Park. So I think one of the major messages that one of the ways to get across is this sort of a new approach is for the steel poles to get installed. What is the schedule for steel poles getting installed, since I've not seen too many of them?
So steel poles specifically, right, and it kind of depends on the area. So a lot of them in the high fire threat areas are being replaced by steel poles. And, you know, an average pole life, we consider that we get our money's worth out of them at 30 years. But realistically, most of our poles will last more than 70 years. And so based on the inspections is based on our replacement schedule on poles. And that's not just the high fire threat areas, that's for all areas. So we really look at the age of the pole and we go by our inspections. We go and do an annual inspection where we'll drill the pole and inspect it completely, and that'll base on whether that pole is getting replaced or not.
Okay, so what you're saying is, though, that the future is going to be all steel poles and concrete?
Not all poles will be steel poles, but a lot of our poles will. So we look at our strategically, you know, what the wind loading is on these poles. If a steel pole is going to hold that load better, then it's going to be a steel pole. If it's a frequently used pole that has an underground system on it, then it's going to be a steel pole. But we design each pole specific for the location that it's in. Right.
Good.
So.
Yeah. All right. That helps understand some of your decision making. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I asked for any other questions from any other board members. Okay, hearing none, Brian, at a later date, you'll have to explain to me how you climb a steel pole versus a wooden pole. I'm very curious. So thank you all for that report. As we move to files items. Is there any comments on item 9A1?
The report is in your package, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ann. Then there's 9B1. Any comments or update with respect to 9B1? 9B2?
Nothing to add other than the report itself.
Thank you very much. 9B3.
The report is in your file. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have just a quick question about 9B3. It relates to VGS. I understand, and the report was filed, and then there was an update provided regarding both the completion of the repairs at Valley Generating Station. I just wanted to confirm that that is done and everything is operating as expected with no additional leakage. And also the action taken by AQMD. Can someone give us a quick update as to that action and its status?
As to the repairs, the second repair has been completed and operational, and in the last 3 weeks since the units have been brought online and tested, there are no leaks.
Okay, thank you. The South Coast action, Marty, can you speak To that, if Nancy isn't on the line.
This is Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Don't have any additional information other than what you provided. We only received the sort of the ticket, the notice of violation from HSU, and would expect to get more detail from them shortly. But we have no further details at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions about 9B3?
I have a question. This is Jill BARAD. I'm concerned about the optics of DWP regarding the Valley Generating Station, and that we have not been forthcoming in giving information to the community. And once a month I hear from the neighborhood councils complaining about it, and I don't have any answers about that. Would anyone like to comment on that? What are we doing to let the community know what our position is on this and what we're doing and what the status is now? Thank you.
Nancy or Joe, do you want to comment on the discussions we've had, as well as direct meetings and also of the on-site visit with some of the community members?
Hosted meetings with the community, with Coming Beautiful, and also a plant tour, and have been in contact with them. We've provided updates to the City Council in the form of reports, and in the report which we provided today, we talked about the plans to shortly begin posting the methane measurements on our website. So we continue to try to keep in contact with the community. And if there's anybody specific that we missed or need to reach out to, please let us know.
Yeah, it could be that we talk to the community immediately around the plant, but there might be other communities further away that we haven't. So if there's, as Nancy said, if there's someone who's asking particularly, we certainly can broaden our net that we reach out to.
Yeah, I was particularly wondering about the Sun Valley area that seems particularly concerned about this issue.
We've been in touch with some groups in the area, and if there's neighborhood council specifically that we need to reach out to, we can do that as well.
Okay. Why don't I email you that information? I think that would be helpful.
Get right on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Marty.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll now go to item 15. Item 15, that was pulled by Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner, would you like a presentation?
Yes, just a brief presentation, and I just have 2 questions at the end. Thank you.
Presentation on item 15, we will have Jason Rondu, the Director of Clean Grid LA, as well as Michael Buck, who manages or supervises the Distributed Resources Program Group.
Okay, thanks, Reiko. So Jason Rondu again here. I'm going to hand it off to Michael Buck, who has spent quite some time developing this new program to help address a pretty significant gap in our local solar portfolio. We're very excited about this pilot program, and it's been a long time in the making. So I'm going to hand it off to Michael to jump into the presentation.
Thank you, Jason. And good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, my name is Michael Buck, and I oversee the Distributed Energy Resource Programs Group here at LADWP. I'd like to give a brief overview, as requested, of the Virtual Net Energy Meeting Power Pilot Program, or BNEM, and address any questions that may arise. The next slide. I'll start with a few comments about LADWP's Net Energy Metering, or NEM program. NEM has been a major driver for the installation of rooftop solar systems in Los Angeles. This program has helped LA become a national leader in local solar installations. And as we see on the next slide, However, the NIM systems are not common among multifamily dwellings compared to single-family homes. Essentially, for multifamily residents to participate in NIM, each customer would essentially need solar equipment connected directly to their individual meters, and this could be cost prohibitive and space prohibitive. Next slide. So we developed the NIM pilot program to remove barriers and encourage the installation of solar systems on multifamily dwellings. The pilot will enable owners of multi-meter properties to build a single solar system on their property and allocate a portion of the proceeds to tenants. Essentially, the way it would work is a solar system will be installed on the building. The system will be connected directly to LADWP's power grid, and LADWP will compensate the tenants, owners, and or the project developers for the energy produced through the solar installation. Tenants will receive checks annually for their participation. The pilot will help LADWP meet our local and state clean energy goals. However, the main, or at least one of the main objectives, is to expand solar benefits to customers who live in multifamily dwellings. And again, the program will mutually benefit customers, tenants, property owners, as well as project developers. As far as scope, the VNIM will use up to 5 megawatts of LADWP feed-in tariff program capacity and offer power purchase agreements for up to 5 solar projects on multifamily dwellings. At least 40% of proceeds will will be allocated to the tenants of the buildings, and preferential enrollment will be granted for customers in areas with historically low participation in solar programs. This generally coincides with disadvantaged communities and communities with high Callan viral spring scores. Next slide. Participants in the VNIM pilot will be compensated at the feed-in tariff rate, which varies depending on the project size, and this table indicates the actual values.
If I can interrupt you, what has been your success rate with the property owners' willingness to participate in this program?
We've had a number of developers contact us to proceed with a program, a VNIM program. So we expect, once we launch, to have a lot of interest.
But so far, what do you have any numbers? Anything to report?
We have not accepted any applications or anything, but the pilot, again, will offer up to 5 installations, and I believe we've been approached by over 5 developers wanting to participate in the program. So we don't expect participation to be a problem.
And I'd like to also add, if I could add, with the existing net energy metering program, we do have some multifamily participation, but as Michael mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to have separate meters to sometimes dozens of tenants. So this program is intended to help pilot the VNIM program that will help expand that so that we can have potentially more participation.
Does the installation, is that in the beginning when the building is being put together and built? At what point do you offer that to the property owner?
The installation could go in as the building goes in initially, or it could be installed on older buildings.
Michael, isn't the part of the key being the word virtual, where we can't really net meters, so we're doing it virtually to portion the savings? Isn't that kind of the difference here?
Exactly. That's the main point of the program. And just looking at this last slide, we estimate residential customers will receive approximately $363 per year through the pilot. Our administrative cost to issue annual checks per tenant would be about $30 per check, and an average real building may hold up to 150 tenants. Each year, the BNEM pilot would generate renewable energy credits and provide a revenue stream for LADWP. Estimates indicate over $82,000 in renewable energy credits will be generated annually, and over $177,000 will be generated for LADWP by the resale of the energy produced by the program. Lastly, we plan to share cost information and analysis for the pilot with the board after the first anniversary of launch.
Good. Okay.
And with that, I'll entertain any other questions that may arise.
I would think that the residents would be wanting to participate in something like this.
Definitely. This is a real win for them.
Yes, well, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just have a few questions specifically related to scalability. I know the pilot is to help us understand the barriers and all that. What do you foresee is the timing for us to ensure that we can scale the project? Because 5 megawatts is tiny, right? But that's a good start. What's your timetable to scale it up, specifically because of multi-family residents? And I'm very interested that those are located out in the low-income areas.
Yes, we agree that there's more BNEM potential than the 5 megawatts, and if this pilot is successful, we can scale up. However, that will require IT integration into our billing system. The current process of offering checks is manual, and BNEM integration with the billing system will be key to a larger program being feasible.
And if I could add, Michael points out one of the biggest limitations for scalability. One other question is, do we have to necessarily, complete the entire pilot before we start to have some idea of whether or not it should be scaled? And I would say not necessarily. We can revisit that through the course of the pilot, and I think make that choice. But the major impediment to scalability is integration into the billing system. That is the number one piece. And so Michael has been, over the last several months, and I think beyond that, working with IT to figure out and scope out how to actually do that. So that's I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's, to scalability, that's the number one challenge that we'll have to address.
And that's why I asked the question, is I would like to see the department really prioritize the upgrades to the billing system and ensure that the integration is certainly setting this up for failure if we're thinking about scaling it, if the back end system is not ready and we don't have that capability right now. We issue checks, right? But really, the core benefit for multifamily tenants is to put that credit on their billing system, on their bills. So I would like to really put that up front. The billing system is integral, as Jason and Michael have expressed. And the second thing is really making sure that the outreach to the contractors and developers who are going to be interested in this. I know we have some guidelines that we issued on the VNEM. That's great. But there are some similarities and differences between the NEM and the VNEM, right? But still, there will be some interconnection and other work additional work that may be needed. So I just would like to see the department probably develop like a toolkit for developers and contractors, so that we are able to address, especially for the 5 projects that we're going to be piloting under this program. That's all I have.
Thank you for that comment. That's very helpful.
Okay, terrific. And Commissioner Reyes, is there a date by which you'd like any update on this pilot?
I would like to really support the recommendation of Fred. I think he said, and he reapplied it to the previous item as well on the FIT, on the 1 year out, 2 year out type of report, where we could see, right, how the projects are progressing. So I think that was one of those process that I would like to see, to adopt those.
Terrific. Then I would move to amend the resolution to include a report back to this board in 12 months and a second report back in 24 months. Is there a second?
I second that.
Susie, would you call the roll?
Commissioner BARAD? Commissioner BARAD, you're on mute. Commissioner BARAD, your vote aye? Is it aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner LEHRER?
Yes.
President McCLAIN-HILL? Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY?
I think she's left the meeting.
Vice President REYES?
Aye.
Commissioner President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye. 4
ayes.
Terrific, and the motion passes. I understand that concludes our open session agenda. As it turns out, the items left for closed session that do not have board reports and would require private conversation are being deferred. So the 4 items that we have as action items, item 17A, 17A2, 17A3, 17A4, and 17B1A can be taken up and adopted in open session unless there is some need to confer with council. Are there any questions with respect to any of those items?
Can you read them out again, please?
They're in your closed session package. It's 17. Yes, 17A2, 17A3, 17A4, and 17B1A.
So you can vote on them in block if there aren't any questions.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve those items?
So moved.
I second. Susie, would you call the roll?
Commissioner BARAD?
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER? Commissioner LEHRER? President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
VP REYES?
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
4 ayes.
Thank you. Then the motion's passed. And then that then concludes the meeting. I would like to, again, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce a motion that's to adjourn our meeting in memory of Tom LeBon. Is there a second?
Second.
Susie, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner BARAD?
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER? President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Vice President REYES?
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
4 ayes.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. There will be no follow-up closed session. Thank you, everybody.
Well, is there...
Commissioner LEHRER?
Commissioner LEHRER, you had a question?
Commissioner LEHRER, you're on
I would like to be in a closed session, if that's possible, for a quick question.
Certainly, we can go into closed session.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
That would be a different, that would be a different line. So you would have to, since we've already adjourned the meeting, Commissioner, you would have to.
We can't do it, can we, Joe?
No, we've adjourned, yeah.
Yeah, we've adjourned the meeting. Commissioner LEHRER, if you would either reach out to me or Joe, that would be great, and can deal with and direct you with respect to your question, okay?
Yeah, I will reach to the Commissioner directly offline.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.